Hey everybody, this is GhostChaser Nick. Welcome to the GhostChaser Podcast. This is the second episode. It's kind of your one stop for entertainers and creators in the Las Vegas area from the actually more from the calloused underbelly of Las Vegas, us indie guys. So we have another guest here, Tom Kunzman. He is a musician and actor. He auditioned for one of my roles for a film that I'm doing, and we just kind of, hooked up that way, and I listened to his music, and I really liked it, and I was like, oh shit, like, we're going to have a whole lot in common. So he was nice enough to be my second guest on the podcast, and so here we go. Welcome,
Hello.
Tom. Oh my gosh. All right, let me adjust this camera here. There we go. All right, you're good to go. Yes, you look good.
All right.
Cool. Well, Mr. Tom, holy shit.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being on the podcast. Okay, so let's start with like basics. Mm-hmm. How long have you been in Vegas?
It's going to be 2 years in March, so in about 2 months it'll be 2 years officially.
What made you come out here?
So initially I was in a band at the time, and I had a team that was based in LA, mm-hmm. and we wanted to live a little closer to them, be able to do a little bit more in person. And then in 2021, that all kind of fell by the wayside. We kind of split apart towards the end of the year. Yeah, and it was all for
because of
the
circumstances, or just because the band just wasn't working out, or what?
Sort of for the band, yeah. I think like we were just tired, and it was like almost like 10 years straight of just touring and then making a record. Then the same stuff you hear anybody in a band talk about, who just finally are like, okay, I need time.
Sure.
And as anybody who plays in a more rock and roll or punk rock based band, they probably know how difficult it is now post pandemic.
I think it's difficult post. I think we're kind of in a post rock era. I don't think that rock's even alive, really. It's not part of the mainstream as far as music is concerned.
For sure.
It's really not. And it's so strange to realize that like you have like Machine Gun Kelly and shit like that, but he's not even from that world. He transitioned over.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like he started in the freaking punk territory and then leveled up like Blink-182 or Green Day or these guys.
Sure, it was a way different trajectory.
Yeah. And I think he just did it because it was a better career move, but he's like the only thing that's going on that's even remotely rock and roll, I would say, in the mainstream.
Or new.
Yeah.
Like anyone new is not really getting much of a chance. I mean, you see that band Måneskin, they're doing well. Those guys, they won the Eurovision. And they've been doing very well. Done a few collaborations with like Tom Morello and Iggy Pop and stuff like that. And
Tom Morello and Iggy Pop, those are still from yesteryear. Right?
Yeah, so
because there was this. I'm guessing that you come from the whole punk metal territory as well. Okay, gotcha. Because and how old are you?
I'm 31.
31. Okay, yeah. So I got a few years on you. I'm 39, but I think we still probably we're part of the same era. Whereas like emo punk, like post-hardcore metal, like all of those kind of commingled, right, shows together. It wouldn't be uncommon for there to be like an emo or post-hardcore band play with a freaking metal band or a punk band.
No, not at all.
Like that was really common because they're all part of the same scene, and those sensibilities, those like different like types of music, were all kind of appreciated by the same people to some degree.
For sure,
you know, and that was like really alive in the underground, and there was always your, rock bands that were on the radio that were not part of that world at all.
Right. Even if they came from it.
Yeah.
It completely changed.
So some would level up into that, and we see like some bands like I don't know if like Under Oath. Under Oath tried to transition up to that. There's a bunch of bands that tried to do that, and some of them succeeded. But ultimately, in the past 10 years, we've seen rock just like not be something that is part of mainstream music anymore at all.
For sure.
And it's and rap has kind of taken over, and
that's got like its own lane. It's like rap and country have seemed to really proven that they're their own industry. It's like there's a music business, and then there's like rap and country. Yeah. In my opinion, I see it as two different entities.
I had never thought about it that way. I think you're probably right, but there's definitely other rap that's become more accessible. I feel like rap right now is doing what metal did in the 80s. Like, metal was the biggest genre of music in the 80s.
Yeah.
It was bigger than anything internationally. Mm-hmm. you know, and I feel like rap's just kind of doing that now, and I think stuff like your emo rap type stuff, like Post Malone's like the king of emo rap,
bridging the gap a lot, which is really cool because I
Yeah.
was always that kid when I was 11, 12 years old who I loved rap and hip hop, but I also loved punk rock, and a lot of my friends couldn't understand that. So of course you get the tag like poser constantly. It's like, dude, I just love all music.
It was funny. It was kind of an ebb and flow. I feel like what in our scene, and like what you would have things that would become. I'm not making a lot of assumptions here, so correct me if this isn't the world that you come from. It's definitely the world that I came from. It would be like there'd be things that would be new trends in the scene, and those things would take, and then those things would become adopted, like skinny jeans, for example.
Yeah.
Would become adopted by the mainstream, right?
Yes.
I was wearing girls' jeans before
Same.
guys' skinny jeans were
Same.
available,
Yeah.
right? And you could buy guys' skinny jeans in Europe, but
Not here yet.
you couldn't buy them in the U.S. yet. And I remember going to like Target with my dad and walking directly to he was like, let me buy you some clothes. And I walked directly to the girls section, and he's just like, my dad's just like,
Super confused.
Yeah.
Like, what are you wrong way, man?
yeah, what's going? He was actually really cool about it
Yeah.
at that time, which was funny. But yeah, so like we'd set a trend, it'd become popular, and then that same scene that created that trend would rebel against that trend.
Yeah. Yeah. That
Right. So
definitely
I saw
happened,
like
for sure.
skinny jeans like became popular, and then all of a sudden it was like gym shorts. Everyone was wearing fucking gym shorts
Yes.
with their Vans instead
No,
of
we're
skinny
definitely
jeans.
from the same world because that definitely happened. I remember being on stage. I was like 14. I was in this metalcore band, and same deal. I was wearing probably the only pair of skinny jeans any of us could find. We all found out where it was. We're all texting each other like, "They're selling them here.
I
Go
know,
now
dude.
before they're gone." And then we're on stage dressing like that, but the whole audience are in gym shorts or sweatpants or something, and it was like
Like they were part of that metal scene.
Yeah.
So they weren't just like outsiders. They were actually part of that
They were
scene.
in
but,
it, yeah.
but that was their new trend.
Yes.
I remember seeing the gym shorts, going to a show, and I was like, gym shorts? What the?
I know.
What did I miss?
you're a little vulnerable there, man. Like these pits get pretty rowdy. I'm not gonna wear
I know,
gym shorts.
but I was like, I remember seeing the younger kids, maybe 3 or 4 years younger than me,
Yeah.
and they're all setting that new trend, and I was like, I missed something. This is so weird. But yeah, so I remember there was an era there where, you know, because it became commonplace in the scene to dislike rap, then it became counterculture within the scene to like it.
Yeah.
Which I remember having friends that
So
like
many
all of a
flips.
sudden they were listening to like all the crunk rap that fucking came out, and then you had this like then you had guys wearing grills, but we're still going to metal shows.
Yeah, it was
stuff.
it was very confusing times, I think, because it was all at an age where everybody, they thought they knew who they were already at, say, 15, 16 years old.
Sure.
But we're all still trying to figure it out as life goes on. So you kept
Yeah.
seeing that change happen. So it was like every 6 months, there was something new that didn't quite make sense with what was happening 6 months before. It almost seemed very uncertain. It seemed like everybody was kind of just going with the flow.
I don't know if I necessarily see it that way. I see it as like it was in the lifeblood of that culture to constantly come up with new shit.
Yeah, maybe.
You know,
maybe that was just a means to challenge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe there's some like, you know, yeah, we're all trying to find ourselves, but but I feel like that was just like part of the culture was to create a new thing. So, I'm glad we're having a very noisy night outside, so it's going to fuck up all my audio. So
They're looking for me.
I even freaking put noise suppressing caulking around my door here, and it helped
really?
a little bit, but clearly not enough. But yeah, it was. I feel like it was part of the lifeblood to change things and try new things.
Yeah.
And I don't know what happened, but it's like I feel like everything, like, I don't know what your progression was, but mine was going from like pop punk in like high school to like emo hardcore, and then got into like metalcore around that time. And then metalcore got big and big and big and big and big. And I feel like and I might just be making this up, but I feel like there's a direct correlation between Tim Lambesis trying to kill his wife and metalcore falling apart.
It's pretty close.
I feel like they happened exactly at the same. If they're not related, they happened at the same time.
Yeah, it was very good timing, all around the same 2 to 3 years.
It was like your biggest hero is like a fucking wants to be a murderer, and you're like,
Yeah.
what the fuck is happening?
That was some pretty mind-blowing news.
That was wild, man.
Yeah.
I still have trouble listening to As I Lay Dying. It was on a playlist the other day, and I was like, I can't do it, man.
Yeah, well, didn't one of the members leave because he was struggling to stay in the band with him or something like that?
I think Tim Lambesis is a fucking textbook narcissist, personally.
I never knew too much about them, so when that came out, I only knew them from their music. Mm-hmm. So when that all happened, I was very like, is that how this goes? I was so confused.
Yeah, I remember going to like Cornerstone Festival and seeing As I Lay Dying before Frail Words Collapse came out, before that album came out.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you gotta see this fucking band.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, the fucking cops are doing it. They're doing a number outside. But still live in the city, folks. We're in the suburbs, but I can't get away from it.
You can't escape the sirens, man. They're everywhere.
But yeah, I remember going and seeing, everyone's like, you gotta see As I Lay Dying, and I was like, holy shit, these guys are awesome.
Yeah.
So I remember seeing them rise, and he started his own studio, and he was very successful. Had a bunch of entrepreneurial endeavors.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't aware of all that.
Yeah, and then he went to jail, and he was going to be going to go to school to be a counselor for men who have done the same thing that he had done.
Really?
And I was like, that's your thing, dude. Well, I was like, fuck yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Turn this thing into something good. Like, I would love to see you succeed at that drop, the music thing.
Make it something positive.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I can get behind that. And then the second that he got out of prison, he didn't even pursue that degree anymore. And I was like, dude.
Really?
And I was like, you're so full of shit.
Such a bummer, especially as like a fan who's like that's a bummer to see that, because you want to see them get better.
Yeah, you do. But I think people just sometimes need to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't want this to be the whole subject of our thing, but yeah, when they got back together, I was like, I can tell these dudes aren't cool with it. I was like, what's going on?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, you could just tell.
You can feel that stuff. That's the whole point of music, is whatever's going on inside ends up radiating outward, and fans can tell.
I think that's the whole thing. What was special about that scene was the fact that most of what was coming out was really authentic.
Yeah.
That was what was so special about it.
Because
everyone had already accepted, if you're in a metal band or a punk band, you already accepted this shit ain't going to be on the radio.
Yeah.
You'd already owned that.
Loved it. Yeah.
You already owned that. So it was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to say what I want to say, since I know that there's no chance of this being radio worthy.
That was a really, I think, beautiful time for making music, because nobody was, at least where I was at the time when we were playing shows, it was constantly multi-genre. Aside from one band, I remember everyone got along.
Yeah.
Everybody was always supporting each other. We were always getting each other on each other's shows if they weren't. We were always trying to hook each other up. None of us cared that nobody was paying us and we were getting ripped off. We didn't even know we were getting ripped off. Because for us, we were like, this is awesome. We're on stage right now.
Well, and there's
people are freaking out.
There's that reward in like just playing the show and seeing people just immediately dig it.
Yeah, it was a very immediate reaction to that.
You're like,
genre.
well, it's almost like most nights that's enough for you.
That's At
you
that
know what
point
I mean?
in time, that's all that mattered. 15 years old, I was like, this is everything I wanted. This is what I'm doing when I go see my favorite bands. This is huge for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I stuck with that for a little while. But then it got like the scene. I don't know how it got for where you were living at the time, but for where I was living, it got very toxic very quick. Like the real tough guy attitude started coming in. Every show was just violence, to a point where it was like, okay, this isn't even fun.
There were a lot of towns when I had a band called Copernicus, and then a band before that called For the Love of God, and both one's metalcore and one's deathcore. And whenever we toured and went other towns, we noticed how different our town was, because we didn't have a lot of that. We had like one or two dudes that were always looking for a problem, but everyone was like, everyone else in the scene was like, I don't know what his problem is. That was kind of their attitude. So they just looked dumb.
Right. Well, that's cool.
But we didn't realize how special that was.
Very special.
Until we went to other towns.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, we didn't even know what we had, man. We were so tight-knit and everybody's kind of on the same page.
Yeah, ours got very dangerous really fast, like to a point where you would go play shows and you would just want to do your set and leave, but you were also like, you had your friends there. So you didn't want to leave them there. God forbid something awful was going down, because you didn't know. And it got to a point where some of us, we weren't able to get past 2 songs. They would have to shut the show down. Like, this is not what I came here for. And that's
a bummer. Yeah, we went to other. I was in a small town, Salina, Kansas, right in the middle of Kansas, and when I was kind of in the height of that, Wichita, which was farther south. Whenever we went down there, those guys, like the straight edge kids, they were always looking for a fight.
Yeah, I never.
Like, you know, like I
grasped
saw
that
some
concept.
crazy shit go down in that town alone. Guys get thrown through windows and shit.
Yeah, I was like, you guys need a drink.
Yeah.
Let's chill out a little bit.
There was this guy, I didn't know him, but there was this guy, Ozzy, that was in the Wichita straight edge scene. He's kind of the ringleader of that. And then he had beat so many people up, given so many people shit, just been violent and aggressive and bully so many people for freaking doing drugs or whatever. For doing drugs and shit. And then he decided he wanted to start smoking weed and didn't want to be straight edge anymore. And his whole gang turned on him, broke into his house, stole his shit, and he acted like he was a victim. And I was like,
now everyone's supposed to feel bad for you.
no, you're not a victim. You started this, dude.
Yeah,
I didn't even know him
that.
personally, but I remember hearing all the rumors about it. So take it with a grain of salt. Everybody's watching this from the Wichita scene, right? And I was like, Nick, that's not what happened. Like, that's what I fucking heard from people that were friends with Ozzy. Yeah. So they're like, he was like, oh, they're not treating me right. I'm like, you were literally beating people up at shows.
And that stuff kills the scene because people stopped coming out.
Yeah.
People stopped coming out because they couldn't, and I couldn't understand it at the time, but they would all start getting more into like dubstep and like EDM stuff. And at the time I didn't get that because I was still very integrated in that scene because I was playing the shows. It was different for me.
Oh yeah, you had some ownership of it.
Yeah. So for them, I'm like, I can't understand why people don't want to come out anymore. This doesn't make any sense. I'm like, oh, it makes total sense because my friend,
they'd rather feel good.
Yeah, she came out and she was 13 years old and got kicked in the face by like a 30-year-old man. You know, I wouldn't go either.
When you word it like that, it's like, holy shit.
That's what was happening,
that's for real? Like, that's fucking nuts, man.
Yeah,
like,
and from
crazy.
that moment, that was the era I first started playing shows. So it was like a drug. I couldn't stop. And then, I kind of realized, I'm like, well, you know what? Similar to you, I had roots in punk and pop punk prior to that, to where I was like, I think I want to go back to that and just have fun again. And
I think that's why there was a resurgence of pop punk, is because the negativity got really rough.
Yes, 100%.
And people were just so fucking over it.
Yeah, and I was like, I see why you guys are going to the more electronic route of shows because they're fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm enjoying it too. I had bands because at the time, AFI had been split off at the time.
You look like you're from AFI.
Audio. I get that a lot. I've been getting that since like 7th grade.
It's so good though. It's clearly intentional.
At this point, I don't know. I think I'm just stuck. I can't get out. I can't get out of it.
That's awesome, though. No,
it's so funny. Yeah, I just I was in a coffin at night. Like, oh, this is normal, right? This is fine. But yeah, like it's so funny because they were doing like black audio, and that's the stuff that bridged the gap for me into electronic music. I'm like, this is a really good time, but it can also still have a little bit of that minor key music and like that darkness to it that I liked from metalcore and some hardcore punk rock. So I always found a way to relate everything to each other. Yeah. And I think other people did too. But a lot of the musicians, I think a lot of us got stuck because we were just so obsessed with performing that it was like we weren't actually seeing it from the audience standpoint that like, no, this isn't fun for us.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I know some people still talk about it and would love to see reunions and stuff, but I'm like, eh.
I think I'll tell you this. I think it's disintegrated enough that the scene's gotten small enough that now they're realizing that they've got to keep it positive in order for this to survive. Yeah. A band who's like, I guess, as far as we're concerned, is big now. Kubla Khan. My band toured with them a bunch before they were anybody. Mm-hmm. We were just homies.
Awesome.
And toured all the time. And Matt was such a great dude, but he was one of the only voices. Like, my bands were Christian bands that I was in, but he was straight edge. And at the time, but he was one of the only non-Christian bands out there that I was aware of that was making an effort to say to everybody, like, I am not your enemy. Yeah, you're not my enemy. Cool. Right? And he would have songs about racism and the stuff that he dealt with, right? Cool. Which were really powerful, right? But he would also plead with the audience, be like, we don't have to hate each other. This can be good. And I remember really, I think, Copernicus, it wasn't like we were like super preachy or anything like that, but I think it was good for people to hear it from somebody who wasn't coming from a religious standpoint.
For sure, yeah, because they don't think you have a motive. It's just
there's no agenda. It's just
agenda.
Pure.
That's
it's just
the word
pure.
I was looking for. Yeah,
it's just pure. It's like, dude, I don't want to hate you, and I don't want you to hate me.
Because you probably genuinely do mean that 100%. But when people see that tag, a lot of people are just they don't.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
Don't respond as well.
And I kind of diverged away from that, and I think that's just kind of how things have gone in just music in general.
For sure, I agree.
But yeah, I remember just hearing Matt say that stuff, and I was like, this is really refreshing. I think everybody else felt the same way. And now if I ever go to a metal show, which is very rarely, but if I ever do, I don't see the kind of toxic behavior.
That's great. Yeah,
that I used to, but it's not as big as it was.
Right. Yeah, which is crazy because that was the whole metal was just always rising, and for a while it was on top.
Yeah, metalcore was like tipping into the mainstream. Like there were a couple bands that were like doing radio versions of their songs, which I fucking hated that they did that. But they were trying to level up. They're trying to we want to get the song on the radio, so let's do a singing chorus.
Yeah, yeah. They're like, we want to keep doing this for the rest of our lives. Yeah, they kind of probably saw the writing on the wall.
Sure.
Yeah, but I love that was a thing when that did start to come back, and the idea, the concept, which had been around forever, of like the whole PMA idea. Finally got some light, because I wasn't aware of that being so prominent in hardcore and in punk. Like from Joe Strummer, always really defending all races and all genres of music, all cultures, and and people can think what they want, but Johnny Rotten was the same way. He was always looking out for people, even if his delivery was a little aggressive, but you would see that, and it was such an interesting thing. And then, of course, Bad Brains. Yeah. Like, how can you forget that? How can you overlook that at all? Because that's all a part of it. So I think it just took a lot of people, especially because everyone was so young, to realize like how that was always the point. And a lot of people just missed it in the beginning. And I think a lot of the bands, like you said, were starting to make that. They were kind of tipping over into the mainstream at the time. And I think maybe a little bit of ignorance was still left to where they didn't know how to turn it off yet. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
It was an interesting time.
I guess like turning back to what we were saying before, I think the scene's constantly reinventing itself. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so that PMA stuff continues to take a new form. Yeah. Because the cycle is the same.
Yeah, which is so cool. Like, as long as that's being the root, which is what it was in the beginning, and that's what made the legends who they are. Yeah. Even long after they're not, they're dead, some majority of them. And it still carries on. I think that's really important for any young band to try to, if you're going to wave any flag, it should be something positive.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's also something to be said for your art being, art is an expression, right? At least my experience, at least in the underground scenes, you have a higher probability of finding people that are authentically nice and considerate. Like, you see that in the mosh pit, somebody falls down, people are picking them up. Yeah, that's really common, right? You know, like a mainstream show, like the fucking, what was it, Travis Scott? Is that what it was? That were like those people fucking died in that show, and nobody was doing shit about it, right? Yeah. But like the scene we come from, it's like, now, mind you, yes, there are guys throwing elbows and wanting to beat people up, but there are also people that would fall down in the circle pit and get picked up. Yeah. There was also this kind of communal.
If you weren't in it, you didn't view it like that. You viewed it as we were crazy and everyone was violent and out of their minds. Like, you're insane for going to those. It's like, you're not there enough to know, because in all actuality, it was actually other genres of music. I was noticing that same thing, where if someone was getting hurt, they thought that was normal, and you would get a guy who wasn't in the scene but would go to a show and just start pushing people around. You're like, dude, you're missing the point. We're all here together.
Yeah, well, we're
not against each other right now.
We're not against each other. This is a way of kind of getting the aggression out.
Right.
Collectively.
Yeah. We're here to actually do this at the same time, not at each other. You're not my punching bag.
Yeah. I do think you're right. Yeah. From outsiders' perspective, probably people think that it's like, anger within, anger against each other instead of anger, and just like getting, because like aggression or anger or getting your frustration out, like that's kind of an abstract feeling. Like, you can't always put your finger on why you're pissed off. And
it's branded as such a bad thing, and it's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing if you keep it in.
And there's the other aspect of like heavy music often isn't about anger, it's about being empowered. There's that other
that's how it felt.
That's really common. I felt really empowered being in heavy bands.
Yeah, I felt like I finally had a grip on me.
Yeah. Felt very strong, and I definitely found I didn't realize this until I wasn't in the scene anymore, but found a massive amount of strength in the camaraderie. Yeah. Knowing that what I liked, I wasn't alone in the things that I liked.
Yeah, while that existed where I was from, it was really nice. And then rock star attitudes started to kick in and sort of derailed the beauty of that, And then I had just been searching for that ever since, because luckily now my bandmate in my current project, it's like we speak the same language and we don't even have to talk to each other. We just know what we're thinking. Man. Yeah. And it's funny because I'd been around him and we would play those mixed genre shows together constantly, but we never hung out. He came out on one tour with my band prior to this one, and he came out on tour to play drums, and I found out he was into the same type of music that I was, and I'm like, oh.
Does he live here?
No, he lives in Florida.
In Florida?
Yeah,
okay.
But we both grew up in New Jersey, did our first record in New Jersey during the pandemic, and then we both split off at the same time. For warmer states. Yeah,
that was one of my motivators for sure, coming down here.
No more snow.
Well, and you got so with Black Mansions, I mean, a lot of people we're so talking the same shorthand right now that people don't know at all anything about you. So let's let people know about Black Mansions. Tell me and them about that.
Yeah, so Black Mansions it's an electronic music project that I started with my friend Spags. He was in a more industrial, borderline metal, kind of hard rock band at the time that I was doing a lot of metalcore. And as I was transitioning into going back to my roots with punk and pop punk, he had always been with that project. He was very consistent. And they did some really, really cool stuff. They were traveling all over the world, playing shows and touring with some really great bands. And I think it was just one of those things where time happened, everybody grew up, and they split apart, much like my projects did at the time. And we started Black Mansions. He came on tour with me once, and I think it was like 2017 or 2018 in my previous band. And he came out and played drums, and it was just late, really late. We're driving in the van. He's the only one awake with me. And I forget exactly who came on. It was probably Depeche Mode came on, because that's like my driving music. That keeps me awake.
Depeche Mode, yeah.
Yeah, it was like Depeche Mode. I had this whole playlist of just that type of stuff. William Control was in there somewhere, and we were just listening to it. And he was like, "Oh, I write stuff like this all the time. I wasn't aware there were other artists doing it so similarly." I was like, "You do?"
He didn't know that there was Depeche Mode, or
he knew of Depeche Mode, but like a current
people that still wanted to pursue that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that came from a scene that him and I both came out of, because the artist William Control, he had come from that band Aiden. I don't know if you ever heard Aiden. They were like
holy shit.
He was their singer.
Damn.
And he started William Control in like 2000. I could be wrong, maybe 06 or something, maybe a little earlier, and that like changed my whole life between that and Black Audio, because I was like, oh, we can do this differently. But I didn't have the tools to do that. I just had guitars, So I was like, oh, well, that's like a long shot. That stuff seemed so otherworldly to me until I met him, and I saw how possible it all was, literally in
MIDI controller and software, like soft synths.
Yeah, it was so cool.
And they're all the soft synths are free. So you're
right, and that's the beautiful thing. And they stay in tune. Yeah, guitars don't stay in tune. You don't have to. It's awesome. So we started. He started sending me music. I had to bug him for it for a while, because I was just like, dude, send it to me already.
Yeah.
And he finally did, and I was home from another tour after that, which he actually didn't come with us on, because he was really involved in the festival scene. Like, he was putting together festivals and stages and things like that. And when we got off that last tour, he was sending me music, and our song No Connection and another song called Don't Scream were like the first two that I wrote to. And it was just immediate. It was just, I couldn't. The second I heard it, I had melodies and lyrics. And that happens with almost every song he sends me.
Now, question. When you were doing metalcore, what instrument were you playing?
I was singing.
You were a lead vocalist.
Yeah.
Were you screaming during that stuff?
Yeah, I would be screaming.
Were you doing were you doing like singing choruses in your metalcore band?
We started to. We started to do that. We were
you had some familiarity with like vocal melodies and stuff like that, or
Okay. Well, coming from before that, I was playing guitar and singing in punk bands since I was 11. Gotcha. I started doing that really young. So I was always when metalcore, actually a big reason I stopped playing in those types of bands was because everyone wanted to keep getting heavier. And I was like, but I want melody.
I was like, I'm a singer, melody. Bro. I'd like to do more than just scream.
So I stopped primarily due to that, but also because I just saw that the shows were just not happening the way they were. And I was like, okay, when it's not fun, I just don't do it. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm going to move on, because I wanted to be, with anything I do, I want to make sure like I feel authentically connected to it. Otherwise, what's the point?
Absolutely. It's funny, because I was listening to your stuff, and my first impression of it, because Sean Riley was the one that recommended you for the audition. And
Oh,
so
awesome.
so I clicked on your thing on your Facebook profile. It said Black Mansions. I was like, well, let me check this out. And listened to it. And I was like, listened to your vocals, and I was like, I have a really strong feeling he's from the same fucking scene that I'm from.
That's funny. Wow, cool.
Just hearing your vocals, right?
That's amazing.
But then the more I listen, after I asked you to do the podcast, then I listened to. I already liked it, but I listened to more of the stuff. I just listened to all your stuff, and then I was listening to then I started listening more to the synth stuff, and I was like, man, there's a real Depeche Mode vibe going on. And then he did a Depeche Mode cover.
Yeah, enjoy the silence. Yeah.
And I was like, well, there it is. There it is. But it's funny because I got into Depeche Mode before I ever got into synthesizers.
Yeah,
I got into Depeche Mode when I was in college, so that was like 2004, 2005, 2006. They have a greatest hits album, like two volumes of their greatest hits.
Right.
And I remember I bought, it was like a double disc set, and I was driving back. I was living in Virginia over the summers with my mom, and I had to drive back to Kansas. And of course, I had that. It was such great driving music, like you said.
It's the best,
Yeah, but it's like, Depeche Mode is like, if you don't see pictures of the guys, don't look at them. It is like the sexiest fucking synth music ever. Like it is fucking music.
It is.
It is for fucking, right?
Yeah. And that's the best music. That's what it should do. It should invoke some kind of emotion.
I know, but you listen to it, and like, man, like this is like what you listen to, and you're like, yeah, when you're fucking somebody, this is sexy as shit, dude, right? And
it's got that cool edgy darkness to it.
And then you see pictures of them in sweaters, and you're like, those bros ain't getting laid. The fact that they're making music is the only reason they're getting laid.
You see them now, and like they're 70s or something now, and it's like they look awesome. They look like vampires.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so cool.
They look cooler now than they did in the 80s, right? Which is funny. But yeah, so I got into Depeche Mode, but then I didn't really get into synth stuff until I moved to Kansas City, and that was like 10, 11 years ago.
Got it.
So I had quit playing in Copernicus, and I just kind of started over, moved to Kansas City and started over.
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I was already into a lot of like electronic dance music. Like I was really into BT. And then I just kind of started to discover more and more of that.
Yeah.
And
you go down a rabbit hole.
And then the synth pop resurgence happened. And that happened probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I just like everything that it was like it's like my musical taste was given a new lease on life.
That's exactly how I felt. Yeah, I felt like I found something brand new, even though it had been around forever.
Yeah, and it's weird because like John Carpenter's the godfather of synthwave, right? Like that's the style of music that he did for all of his soundtracks. Yeah, and awesome. Like I dig that stuff, but that and there's a lot of like 80s music, like Tears for Fears or Depeche Mode or whatever, that's similar, has this similar vibe, but it's like the resurgence of synthwave is kind of like what pop punk did with punk. Like they took all the good parts of it, and then they kind of rearranged them. Yeah. To kind of give it a new flavor. And so I really got into the Midnight. They're probably my favorite band right now. And I saw them. They were played in Kansas City on my birthday this last year.
Nice.
That was literally the best show I've been to in like at least 5 years.
Yeah, that's so great. Because that's the thing. I mean, it's like the whole concept of punk was to push music further, was to push rock and roll further by stripping away the bullshit and starting over. And synth pop, you think of where like it was really born, that post-punk era with Joy Division. Yeah. It's basically a punk rock band with like a shitty keyboard that they didn't know how to play. Depeche Mode only knew a couple notes. They didn't play piano. Yeah. They were just playing notes.
But they knew the machines though, man.
Yeah, and then like, look what that did.
Depeche Mode knew how to they knew how to work drum machines and shit like that.
Martin Gore is just a songwriting mastermind.
Yeah, it's no question. It was just crazy. And yeah, so I like got into synthwave, and then it wasn't until this last year that I finally bought the JX3P Roland. I haven't had a flagship synth, like a real analog synth ever. Yeah. And it's funny because I ended up buying the one that's as old as me. It's from 1983.
That's so awesome. Right? That's so awesome.
Literally, my soul feels connected to that machine. Right? I don't know what it's like. It's like our whole 38 years took different paths for us to come together. Yeah. And now you're mine, and I can appreciate you.
Isn't that so cool though? Like that's an instrument that came up with you. Like you've come up with this instrument. We didn't come up with guitars. Guitars were around long before we were. Yeah. So that connection is not as real. Yeah. Or not as connected, but this is something where it's like every year there's something brand new and different about it. Yeah. Guitars, as much as that's my first love, guitars and drums and bass, it's like they're all the same at the end of the day. It's the pedals that you use that rearrange
the pedals are your
it,
tuning, at the end of the fucking day.
So when you look at keyboards, like it's just limitless, and that's why I love it so much. Because I would be like, this is stuff I used to only hear in film scores, which being a film
weird.
buff,
it's weird that synthesizers, the only ways that they really stayed in the limelight was in film scores for like 20 years.
No. And then
like we're talking for like
right
1990 to like 2010.
Yeah.
That 20-year span, the only spot that they existed in like the mainstream was movie scores.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Which
it's
is
so crazy.
I mean, I'm
so
grateful that they still survived, like they stayed alive in that, because I mean, the only people that were using synths, the only stuff that was made with synths that we were hearing on the radio was pop music, but the only people that knew how to fucking use them were these producers.
Yeah, that was it. It was a very coveted
Britney
instrument
Spears
at the time.
wasn't fucking writing the synth.
No.
Synth stuff. She wasn't dialing in a patch.
Yeah.
Right? But freaking what's his name? Michael Max Martin.
Max Martin.
Yeah. He knew all that shit.
Right.
Like he's a brilliant musician, so he knew how to use synthesizers. Well, he's coming up all that's for her and Backstreet Boys, which is wild.
I know, because some of the best written music at the time, like it's like when you really go back and listen to 90s pop, it's like, man, this was some of the best stuff that came out in that decade.
It's wild that Max Martin was involved in all of that.
I know.
Like
almost single-handedly.
NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, all the like several Justin Timberlake albums.
Yeah,
like,
which are all great.
Yeah,
like,
I wonder what happened to JT, because all this stuff was fucking amazing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing, like how music just starts to shift.
I think he just walked away. I haven't seen him do anything.
Yeah. Well, once he started acting too, I noticed there was a more focus on that, and he's great at that. He's such a talented dude. So yeah. And he's earned the break. Take the time. Take a nap, man.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
But it is really great. And it's not like nowadays fans of music, not just other musicians, they care about who the producers are. The producers have almost become the rock stars, which is so cool to me, because now it's almost like the faces of the band they're the artists, yes, but like the producers who are really doing it, unless, the producer is in the band. Yeah. You tend to see a lot of that. Like there's a lot of talk about like Andrew Watt, like the dude's on everybody's record. Granted, he's doing a lot more rock and roll stuff.
I actually don't know that name.
He put out some stuff for that like latest Ozzy stuff. He's done some newer stuff with I'm pretty sure with Billy Idol. So he kind of had dipped into that, but he was working with Post Malone, I believe, first, and I could be wrong
That's how
about
we got
that
to
artist.
Ozzy, because Ozzy was on a Post Malone record. Yeah,
that's more than like okay. So then that is the case, yeah. Because I remember reading about him. It's inspiring to see that, because it's not only do we just look at Britney Spears now. It's like people do want to talk about Max Martin.
I know, cool. Like, man,
it's wild. Get the spotlight for a minute, because that was some of the best music.
And what's hilarious about Max Martin, he was originally in a metal band before he was a producer.
Yeah.
When he did the song, the Justin Timberlake, they did the Justin Timberlake song "Can't Stop the Feeling." They asked him, "Oh, Max used to be in a metal band. If this was a metal song, what would it be called?" And he said, "Can't Stop the Killing."
Yeah, more than likely, just be ultra violent. Deadly.
I was so grateful somebody knew enough about him to ask that question. And he didn't miss a beat. He's like, "Can't stop the killing." Like,
he'd been thinking about it. He wrote it already.
Right, he wrote that song already.
There was a breakdown after the second chorus.
But Max Martin came from that Swedish like house music territory, right?
Yeah.
Which dance music was like, I mean, a lot of electronic dance stuff in Europe for years was already fairly mainstream over there, and it wasn't even touching American soil unless it was in a club in New York or LA.
Yeah, I don't think people really got it here until maybe when Billy Idol came here after Generation X and started his own solo career, where he was incorporating that boom, boom, boom for like Dancing With Myself and all that Four on the Floor stuff that nobody else was touching at the time if they weren't a pop band. He was doing it in rock and roll.
Yeah, I think
never lost credibility. It's so great.
Yeah, I think also, but as far as the electronic type stuff that Max Martin was, it's clearly part of the culture where he lived. Yeah. Right. I believe he's from Sweden. I believe so.
I think that's true too.
Yeah, I think he is, but he's somewhere in one of those Norse countries. But since it was part of the culture there, it wasn't, even though he was in a metal band, it wasn't much of a transition for him to start using the dance tunes type stuff that they were using over there for Backstreet Boys and Britney Spears and that type of stuff. which for us, it was entirely new.
Yeah, yeah. And in America, people are so it's shell-shocking when you get a new style of music that you're not used to listening to in the car with your dad all the time. It's really crazy how hard it is to crack open the mind of an American music listener. To like maybe not so much nowadays because Spotify has kind of eliminated the idea of genre. It's just playlists and everything is very multifaceted, and I think everyone just loves everything. And I think they could just really tell if an artist means it, which is cool. Kind of like breaks it down to what really matters. But yeah, back at the time, you would start hearing a punk band start using some electronic drums, and you'd be like, "What the hell?"
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, "What do you mean, what the hell? This isn't new. You just haven't been paying attention."
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
I think yes. I think there's definitely it's become way more democratized because of Spotify. Absolutely, but I still find I listen to a certain genre and I'll still eventually hit a glass ceiling on that, and it starts giving me the same shit.
Yeah, that's happening.
And finding
now.
deep cuts becomes more difficult, and they're there, but I have to physically go look for them.
Yeah.
It's not going to pop up in the algorithm anymore because the algorithm is honed in which ones get the most, which ones keep people listening the longest.
For sure. And people aren't going to put out a filler anymore.
Yeah.
Because there were some fillers on albums that were their best songs that maybe they didn't agree were the best songs, but to me, I was like, this filler's great.
I always thought that was what was strange about pop music, is I thought that their albums, I feel like the albums were released for the 2 or 3 singles, and the rest of the album was crap. I feel like that was really common.
Yeah, I think that was common for a lot of genres of music.
But when you're in the underground scene, I remember lots of albums that were amazing front to back, and the standard was different.
Yeah,
it was like
because you could be free.
Yeah. There wasn't somebody saying we got to get this album out now. Let's write these other 7 songs no one's give a fuck about because we're paying to advertise these 3 songs.
Right. We just need this so that we can say it's an LP. Yeah, because I couldn't say it was a full length if it didn't hit I think it was 35 minutes.
And it's not going to qualify for platinum sales or bullshit like that if it's not a full length album.
Yeah,
and that's what they want.
That's why pop got the name it got to guys like us in the underground at the time, where you were looking at pop music and you kind of scoffed at it sometimes because it's like they were playing the game. But it's like you are too. You're just playing a different game. You don't realize it. But you're playing that same game in a different way, and eventually you're going to start when you realize, I have bills to pay, but I need to keep doing this because this is my job now.
Sure.
And you start figuring ways around that, and you got to think okay, let me make sure what I do next I really love. Otherwise, that will be evident. Yeah. That you don't mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I was just talking to a friend today about how my Twitch channel, and this is going to make people not want to be on the channel. Another thing I'm going to say that people are going to make it not want to be on the channel. All right, but I'm not in the algorithm. Like it it doesn't matter how much I do. Yeah. It doesn't get a lot of, and Twitch has an algorithm to it. Right. And I was talking to a friend about, she's pretty successful on Twitch, and she was like, you got to do this and this and this, and I was like, that promotion stuff. That selling myself to other people, it just feels hollow to me. I hate doing it. Yeah. I'll do it for my movie stuff because that's my bread and butter. I gotta do movies. That's what it has to be my thing that brings pays the bills. Mm-hmm. Right. So I don't mind doing it there. Yeah. But doing it just I want more viewers on Twitch. I want more get in the algorithm. I hate doing it. Working at the Instagram and all that kind of shit.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of why my previous project just decided to stop, and why we parted ways with management, because every phone call was about fucking TikTok. And I'm like, look, I have nothing against TikTok, but I don't want to be that person. I don't want my music to, I don't believe that the only way this song that I feel so connected to can be heard by the world is if I do a dance on TikTok. That sounds ridiculous.
Well,
especially if it's out of my character as a person. I'm not going to do it and be blatantly uncomfortable. Yeah. Just because of an algorithm, which all those numbers can be paid for. We can get. I've seen people all the time with fake followers. They've got 20,000 followers, but their posts get 19 likes. It's like, where are your fans?
That is weird shit. I've seen that too.
You can pay for it, and you got to pay for all of it. You don't just pay for one.
Yeah, that's
you got to make it believable. Weird. I mean, to each their own. If you feel good doing that, and that does, for whatever reason, resonate for you. For me, it was I want to know that if I have 20,000 followers on Instagram, I want to know that when Black Mansions gets on stage, there's going to be 20,000 people are watching me.
You know,
I want to know that you came here.
I've actually watched some videos. Do you know who Finn McKenty is? Punk Rock MBA?
Yeah.
I watch a lot of his stuff. I think he's probably the most brilliant.
He comes from a very similar background, too.
He does. I feel like he's probably the most brilliant cultural critic of pop culture of our time. I really do. Because he was talking about how songs that do well on TikTok, people only know one verse.
I saw that video.
And then the guy goes up there to perform, and everyone's singing that one verse.
That's
then the second verse, it's just silence.
It's over.
No one knows the rest of the fucking song.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. It's a very cold. It feels like Black Mirror. It all feels like an episode of Black Mirror.
Dude, for me, I'm like, why would you not go to Spotify and listen to the whole fucking banger? If it's that good, why would you only listen to it on TikTok? Like, that's strange that's the only place that they're getting it, to me, right? Because, I stumbled across... I think you'd actually really dig this if you haven't seen it before. But you know who Rose McGowan is, right? The actress,
of course,
who was in Planet Terror.
Yeah,
she's fucking hot as shit. But she so is. I was what was I looking up? I was looking up. I was trying to find the soundtrack for the movie Spun, which is about like meth in small towns. I remember
Spun. Yeah,
and Billy Corgan did like 6 or 7 original songs for that. And I remember really he was when he was doing his Zwan era.
Yeah.
Right? And I remember really liking those songs. And I was online, you can't find them anywhere online. And I ended up finding them on YouTube in one video. Like they're all like like they're unofficially there, right?
Yeah, it was driving someone else crazy too.
Yeah, I know.
But gotta get this out.
And there's like on that soundtrack, there's like Ozzy Osbourne, Iron Maiden, and a bunch of stuff on that soundtrack. But this video was just the Billy Corgan stuff, and it was still 45 minutes of music.
Wow. That's amazing. That's really cool.
And there's
a full album.
Yeah, for real. And I was like, man, he does, he actually has an Iron Maiden cover on there. It's acoustic, Number of the Beast. But I was like,
wow, cool.
I like this better than the original.
Yeah, right? I probably would too.
But anyways, I was searching for that, and I was like, and so when I was doing that, I had to look on IMDb, and I saw, is it Jonas Åkerlund was the director. And he's a Swedish director. And I was like, why have I never heard this name before? What else has he done? Right? And I looked him up, and he does a lot of music videos.
Oh, cool.
So he does like a lot of Madonna stuff, right?
Wow. Cool.
And I saw that he'd done a music video for Rose McGowan. And I was like...
Music video?
Rose McGowan does music?
Interesting.
And I was like, what?
I didn't know that.
And so I looked it up. Fucking badass. Like,
really?
The song is incredible, and the music video is even more so.
I'm not surprised. I always thought she was awesome.
Dude, but no one knows about it because it came out 7 years ago, and I looked on Spotify. Wow. It's got less than 500,000 listens.
Wow. So crazy.
Which is weird to me. I was like, it's not only is it a great dance track, like it's dark and weird, and she quotes Blade Runner at the beginning.
Hell yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm down with
Stole my heart already.
I'm down with this. And then like in her music video, she's kind of like trying to be the new Bjork. Like cool. She has like 7 different looks, and they're all really fucking scary and weird looking.
Awesome.
Right? That's cool. And I love Bjork.
Yeah.
So like seeing that, I was like, oh, this is totally my jam. Right.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And then she put in an album 3 years ago in 2020. And I was just listening to it before you came down here, and I was like, this is totally my jam. But it is like kind of like a dark, like synth EDM, like Bjork style thing.
That's really cool.
But she clearly has no fucking record deal. She's just doing it herself, and that's why it doesn't have any promotion.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the craziest thing is it doesn't matter who you are. It's all about that press release. Like, what do you?
Well, it's wild that Rose McGowan from Planet Terror, right, had put an album 3 years ago, and it doesn't have 1 million listens. Mm-hmm. That blew my mind.
It's an amazing thing. It's crazy. That's the thing. That's how it works. Because like that's sort of the thing I got really sick of hearing about was people calling me or emailing me with the answer. You don't have the answer. Nobody has the answer. Nobody really knows what they're doing. It's luck of the draw, really. Like, and it's all perfect timing, this and that. Because I was in this band that we were working so hard. We were doing so much, and we were just not getting anything back. But then when Black Mansions happened, I think it was perfect timing, perfect place, because we're darker, and that's really the stuff that I'm mostly interested in.
Dark and fun, though.
Yeah,
it's still got a fun, dancey vibe to it.
Yeah, it's a very sleek sound. It's like we went that route, and I think at that exact same time was, you started seeing I will say we were talking about Stranger Things a little bit before. The music in Stranger Things has just suddenly bled into everything.
Yeah, but that's
I
Stranger Things. Like I feel like really the correlation is it's directly correlated to the age of people that grew up listening to that John Carpenter.
Yeah. Now
stuff.
their kids, who are the ages
Right.
of the kids in the show, love it. It's
Well,
so
you get
cool.
older, and then you revisit. You listen to, you watch Halloween or you watch The Thing or whatever, and they've got these dark, badass synth scores. Mm-hmm. Right,
best.
and then you've been watching those movies your whole life, and then they become nostalgic.
Yeah.
And then Stranger Things hits, and it's doubling down on that nostalgia
For sure.
And they need somebody that's not only doing something that's similar to what John Carpenter was doing, but making it updated.
Yeah,
something that is.
new.
It's like, yeah, you're painting with the same colors, but it's a lot more complex painting.
Mm-hmm. That was our goal with the 2 covers we put out, actually. With the Ministry cover we put out and with Enjoy the Silence by Depeche Mode. When we put those out, the idea was to not just black and white mimic what they had already done.
It wouldn't be worth it because they already fucking killed it.
They're so good. So you hear people who do cover those songs, they try to change them to make them theirs. But I'm like, but we want theirs all right. We want Depeche Mode and we want Ministry, so we just decided, we're like, let's just update the production a little bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be different anyway because I'm not Al Jorgensen and I'm not Dave Gahan, so I'm going to sing it.
Yeah.
And whatever his production becomes, we just kind of like spiced it up a little bit more for today.
Yeah.
And we fell in love with it, so we ended up doing a whole covers album that we just haven't released yet. And because we just got on a kick, we couldn't stop. We were like, we need to remember we have a second record to finish. But for us, like, our goal was never really to be like every other band we had been in, which was play music, release the music, go tour or whatever. We were kind of like, we don't have to. We don't want to. We don't really feel the need to
Just
tour
doing
anymore.
it for you, yeah.
We're just doing it, and we want to be more all-encompassing. Eventually, like, we're doing some stuff now where Spags will be doing the film score for a few of the projects that I'm a part of.
Nice.
So that's exciting. And then on top of that, books, and we'll do our own short films eventually. It's just stuff like all-encompassing the art that we love.
Yeah.
Movies, books, film, comic books. Like, we're not the first band to do it, but we want to be able to do it our way.
Sure.
With the horror aspect and stuff. So
interesting.
It's a slower driving car, but it's fun.
That's casting a much wider net than I expected. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's a lot. That's holy shit.
Yeah, so it's a slow build or a slow burn, I should say, compared to what I'm used to. Because you know how it was with like metalcore. It's the same urgency as punk. It's go, go, go. Let's do this.
Well, you write a song like on a weekend, and you're playing it at the next show to see if it fucking works.
That was how you test it.
Yeah.
And if it worked, you went and recorded it after, and it was up on wherever you put out music.
I don't know how many times we did that. We wrote a song, and then the next week.
I used to go up holding lyrics because the lyrics were too new.
Oh, really?
So I would have the
shit.
lyrics with me.
Holy
I'd be like, and people were like, "Is this dude really reading the
Is
lyrics
this
right
for
now?"
real? This
Yeah.
guy for real?
I was like, "Yes, this is what I have to do. I want to make sure you like it. I don't want to mess it up."
Funny, dude. That's
And
fucking
it
funny.
tended to work pretty well. But with us,
Wow.
like, we exist primarily on the internet, which is so weird. But I also feel like it suits us. I feel like we should sort of just be existing in the ether. I feel like that's a really fun thing for our band, to not be this physical thing on stage. And one day when we really feel it and we feel like we can do the production justice, we'll do it.
I think that's what the
don't have
Midnight
to.
did. That's a lot. I mean, any synthwave band that's playing live, which is very few.
Yeah.
Right? But the Midnight put out like 4 albums before they played anything live.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
So they put out that the first album, I think it's called Days of Thunder, had like 7 songs on it, and it's awesome front to back. And they just Tyler, I can't remember his last name. He's a vocalist, but he was a folk singer before he was in the Midnight.
Yeah.
And they put out that 7. Him and oh shit, I can't remember their fucking names. Is the producer that writes all the freaking tunes. But they just got together. He's from some Norse country, so he's part of that whole dance music culture. So he knows all of that stuff, and he, of course, Tyler's just an amazing folk songwriter, so he knows vocal melodies and all of that, chord progressions,
storytelling and the lyrics.
Yeah, they got that all together, and they put out a 7-song like album just to see if it would hit, and it fucking hit.
Yeah.
And so they're like, we should do more of these, and they did 3 more albums before they actually were like, okay, how do we do this live?
Yeah.
Right, because they're just
That's the
producing
trick.
it. They're just producing, and when you're doing synth, you're not doing anything. I mean, Depeche Mode did stuff live because they didn't have computers back then. Everything's MIDI.
Yeah.
Right. But now, hardly anything that synth is done done, like properly live.
Yeah, it's very tricky. We're gonna eventually, when we do it, we're gonna try to master Ableton and make sure that we can really master the dialing back of parts so that we can cause some sort of delay and keep parts rolling in case I want to do some interaction with audience and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
So we're gonna try. But we're in no rush. We do everything when we feel like it. There'll be like 2-3 months straight where we don't talk about music at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then
so you just do it when something
flood.
hits, when something comes up.
Yeah, so far every song, but maybe a few. I would say maybe 2 or 3 that have probably felt like we were just trying to get a song in. And not to be released, but because we felt like we just like, I just got to get this one in because like the story is almost completed. And that doesn't work. It just makes it straining and then it drains you. You don't even care at that point.
It's hard for me to tell if that's true for me or not, just because the creative process it's something that's essential to my life. But
Yeah.
anxiety is part of it. For me, I don't know what it's like for other people. It didn't used to be, right? But it definitely is now. And so when I'm writing music and stuff like that, I sometimes do have to force myself and like be like, no, just push through.
Yeah, man, it's taken me like years to stop doing that for myself because it didn't work well for me.
I'm not saying that it's something that everyone should do. I'm saying that I've had to kind of accept that it's part of my process.
That's how it works for you. Yeah, that's the coolest part is everyone's process is different, and I feel like your process changes almost every song.
Yeah,
because it's asking for a different thing every time.
Well, like with screenwriting, it's the process is similar. If I am going to write, I have to set aside. It's like, let's say that I'm trying to write something for a feature script, right? Which means that you are trying to get something like 5 to 10 pages a day on average, right? Yeah. Well, I'll have to set aside about 5 hours for myself, and I've already accepted that first hour and a half I'm not going to write anything.
Yeah.
That
for sure.
That first hour and a half is me just getting over the bullshit, getting over myself.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like going up the roller coaster thing.
Totally
right?
know what you mean.
And and there's all this anxiety about like, is it going to be any good, or do I even have a story to tell? And you can just feel it.
I know.
Right? You just feel it. You're like, oh my God, but I wrote amazing stuff 3 days ago.
Yeah, what's happening today?
Yeah. But and that when I wrote my first feature script, Midgard Serpent Package Boy, which I still want to make, it's just I don't have the money. Likely story.
That's where we find other people's money.
right. So that's why I'm here, because Las Vegas has a lot more of that. Kansas City does not have people with deep pockets that are like, let me pay for your movie. It's a lot more of them out here, which is fucking great. So, but when I wrote that my first script that I wrote, 3 Dames at Pinellas Park, was like I'd never done it before.
Yeah.
So my philosophy on that was go take the path of least resistance. And that was always the philosophy. So when I sat down and I wrote a scene and I don't know what happens after it, I was like, well, what scene happens down the road that you want to write?
Yeah.
I was like, well, then write that scene, because you already know you want to write that scene, and that's the path of least resistance. And I ended up writing a script that's entirely disorganized.
Yeah.
Does not make a whole lot of sense. And so Midgard Serpent, I spent 3 months on the outline alone. Right?
Wow.
And then even after I'd done that, and I was 30 pages in, I just kind of accepted this is part of my process. The anxiety thing for the first hour and a half is just part of it.
Yeah,
and that's okay. I'll get over it, because I always do.
Yeah.
If I give myself the time.
Yeah. That's the thing. Am I allowing myself to fight through this?
Yeah.
That's the tough part.
Yeah, so that's part of that process. And music is easier for me because I've been doing it longer, but sometimes it's still part of it when I'm scoring a movie.
I feel the same way. Yeah. I've been writing a novel for the last 2 years, and it's been the same thing.
No shit.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes me I can't get past a line, and I'll just keep writing and writing. And even though I know it's bullshit, I'm like, I know I'm going to get to that next thing. And it's just kind of chipping away at a hard part of a cave or something. And I'm like, I know there's gold on the other side of this.
I've heard a lot of people say, don't force it. And I'm like, y'all are full of shit.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to just sit yourself down and be like, look, I'm going to write a bunch of crap, and then eventually I'll write something that's good. Yeah. And then we can go back and fix the thing that was crap that facilitated the good thing.
I feel like what they should say is take it easy on yourself while you're doing it, because no, we do have to push sometimes. Yeah. Then maybe it changes every time. For me, it's changed every chapter. I had written when I first started this novel, I wrote it 7 chapters in, and I hated it.
Oh, wow.
7 chapters in. I was like, this sucks. So I deleted it.
You deleted.
I swear I highlighted.
Why would you do that?
Because I just knew. I was like, this is awful.
That's so terrible.
I highlighted the whole thing and just hit backspace. It was all gone. And then I
print it out and light it on fire and then leave the file somewhere.
That would be a more fun, ritualistic way to do it, actually. It would have been better for the soul, too.
Oh, my God.
But then when I started over, I was 13 chapters in. And it just flowed out. Like, I was like, cool, I wrote the bullshit. And now all the good stuff's here. Then I went back and I started editing, and now I'm on like my 3 millionth draft, changing.
Oh, that's awesome. Though.
Changing things every time I look at it, but every time I change it, I'm more proud of what I've done. You know, so I'm like, okay, so I realized for me, like, this is my process. For me, is I got to write the worst thing ever. I mean,
you don't know until you fucking do it. You don't know until you do it.
You don't, yeah. You got to really be available for ideas. I think that's the biggest problem is there's so much distraction for people that want to be, especially who are maybe not just naturally creative. I think there's a lot of people that want to be creative for the sake of maybe having that to say, you know, which is not a bad thing. That's fine. Just make sure you're available for ideas, which most people aren't. They've got work or they have kids or like they can't stop looking at Instagram, like anything, you know.
It's hard for me to get off the fucking phone, dude.
It's like, really hard.
Oh my God.
Sometimes it's really hard because there's so much there.
Yeah.
You know, and you can do so much, and communication is so easy that it's communication coming from all over the place. I'm fortunate enough I get to talk to people from all over the world. Sure. And when I have the chance to answer a DM, I love to, because I like to hear what's going on in other places. I like to hear their opinions on a new song or a new film or something or anything that's come out.
When you're on Spotify, do you check out, like, do you look at the map to see where your music's hitting?
Yeah, we check that out.
It's weird how you'll see, like, someone in fucking Iceland listen to my...
Yeah, it's never where you live, either. It's never where it's...
No one in your... Prophet has no honor in their own town, right? It's never...
It's never where, like, I can easily come perform for you. It's always, like, on the other side of the world, and I'm like, well, I can't get there right now.
Yeah. But thank you.
Yeah, but thank you so much. I'm gonna put out another one solely for you in whichever country. Yeah, I talked to this one. He's a fan of Black Mansions, and he's such a cool kid. He's a really young kid, like probably like maybe 16 years old, and he's from Costa Rica. And he DMs me new songs all the time, and it's the coolest thing. And I've just been hearing him get better and better with every song.
These are his stuff.
His songs, yeah. And he's like, this is like the coolest thing ever, because he didn't really have faith in himself until he started communicating with our band on Instagram. So a lot of bands, too, want to trash social media. And I say only because it's a distraction for people when you're writing. It's really tough to ignore notifications and people texting you all the time or calling.
Oh, my God.
It's really hard to do what you said, is set aside that 5 hours of silence for an idea to come to your head and work off of it. So... But when I get those messages, I like set time aside every night to make sure I'm listening to his music. And anybody who writes wants to send me stuff. I wonder
if the anxiety part of the process for me is directly correlated to like the phone being in my life, because I don't remember having that type of an issue when I was younger, creating anything. I mean, when I was in college, I was writing a fucking werewolf novella, and I was in college. I was writing papers and reading books. I mean, my time's fucking swamped, and I still had the time to sit down for an hour and a half, and I pumped out pages of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, looking back at that, I'm like, there was never any creative blockage when that happened. Right? It was always like, oh, I have this idea. I can't wait to sit down and write it. And then you were just off to the races. Now it's like, oh, I had this idea. Then you get sitting there like, what was that idea?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is so many people too, they like to chalk it up to like, I have friends of mine that they write and things like that, where they'll be like, oh, well, it's tougher now as we're getting older. I'm like, no, it's just you're distracted. It has nothing to do with that.
I think you're probably right. And I literally have considered getting rid of my smartphone. Aziz Ansari got rid of his.
Did he?
Yeah. Well, when the freaking allegations came through, sexual misconduct allegations.
I didn't know about that.
I mean, it wasn't like I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I know that he almost got canceled, and he had that moment of like, I think I'm going to lose my career. And he was looking on Facebook and Instagram, seeing all the terrible things people were saying about him, and he just got rid of his smartphone entirely.
He got now like a flip phone.
He did some stand up. I watched him do some stand up, his newer routine like a year ago, and he talked about now his stand up's entirely different. I think it's the best stuff that he's ever done because I was never a fan of his before. But now his stuff is like hilarious and also a little philosophical at the same time.
Interesting. Cool.
And because he's had to spend a lot of time looking inward because of almost losing his career.
Yeah.
And so he has a bit in his stand-up where he pulls out his flip phone and it gets really fucking quiet. He starts talking about leaving the social media world entirely.
Yeah.
And that's part of his thing. And everything he said up to that point has been fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
But then it's almost like you're learning something.
Cool.
And not necessarily because he has new information for you. But you're learning something because you're seeing someone who is brave enough to do the thing you thought of doing.
Yeah, right. I think that's
like, oh, well, I considered doing this, but this guy, he had to do it for his own mental health.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, I got rid of Facebook for a long time, and the moment I did,
I wish it wasn't so dependent on Facebook for film stuff because I would. Yeah,
that's the only reason I brought it back. Because I got rid of it when my last band ended, and I realized I was like, I don't need this anymore. It hasn't helped me like everyone was telling me it would. Same with Instagram has been awesome. Like I said, the communication's amazing. I love it.
Yeah,
so I keep that.
People don't comment on your photo of your like chicken parmesan and tell you that like Biden's a shithead or something. Like that's not really.
They don't look for a reason to complain.
That's not really how it goes down on Instagram. You don't have a lot of like asshole freaking trolling stuff.
No, happens. It's a little different.
You always like I get people that are like, hey, I look at your Instagram and I can help you make $10,000 a month. I get those guys.
Those guys are everywhere.
Oh my God, the fucking life coaches deliver us. I can't stand them.
I just stand them. I got really good at filtering the stuff I don't want to see, filtering the people I don't need to hear from. And I got onto I watched who I was following. I like really made sure the posts that were in my Instagram's algorithm, because it's all catered to what you look at.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my stuff is a lot of it's a lot more positive. It's a lot more motivational. It's a lot of stuff that gets me out of those funks when I'm like, oh yeah, I need to check where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
And focus my attention on what I need to be doing to make me happy, like writing and stuff like that and whatever else. And a lot of that stuff actually led me back to acting because I started in 2017 and I gotten away from it because of music. And I was touring so much, but I was never really that happy touring. So I had to sit there for a long time. Like when we ended that band, for one, it felt like an identity crisis. But because I'd been that guy in a band since I was 11.
I know exactly what you mean.
It felt weird. It felt naked. I felt cold. I felt like I had nothing to offer. It was really crazy for a few months. It was pretty awful.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I really focused my attention back. I got rid of Facebook because I didn't want to see everybody's bullshit opinions on things that didn't matter. And then and it was great. It really helped me clear my mind. And then I kept Instagram, but I stopped updating it. I just kind of held on to it because there was a lot of people that I still talk to on there. People I've done a bunch of great collaborations with musically that have become good friends and stuff. So I kept it around for that only. And then in that time, I started writing the book. And then so strange. I don't know where it came from. It was like a lightning bolt just kind of hit. Suddenly I had this urge to start acting again. It was so crazy, and it was almost like something else was telling me, like, this is what you need to be doing right now.
What
like,
was the short film you were in? You were a teacher and you were a villain. What was it called?
Cold and Calculated.
Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah.
No, that was really cool.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, no, it was rad. I mean, it was, I was, and did you shoot that in New Jersey?
That was in Philly. I went to Philly for a few days, and we did that.
Did you have connections out there and they flew you out? Or?
I auditioned through there was this site that I had found. It doesn't exist now because I've looked, but it's called Casting 360. I don't know if you ever used that.
I have heard of it, but I've not used it.
It was like a free casting site. Like you could tell, it was like all, like everyone just kind of trying to get their projects made for whether it be student films or short films or indie features and stuff.
It's the casting site for people that don't have money, so they're not paying for it.
Right. Like all they could afford on that film, like they didn't pay any of the actors. They only paid the cinematographer, which thank God, because Matt Mahoney made it look amazing.
Gorgeous.
He
made it look really so good, man.
Yeah, I loved
his blocking and his lighting was so strong.
And he was like a second director on there because the director Stephanie Morgan, it was her first film. And she was really great with all the actors because she was also an actor herself. So
she knew how to communicate to them, but she didn't know the technical side, though, did she?
I don't know how much she knew or didn't. She seemed like she knew a lot. Like she was really in control. It was great. But I I would see him sort of hone it in a little bit. He would help her navigate through those waters a little, and it really set us up nicely. I felt really comfortable and confident, and that was my first time acting at all outside of music videos. The music videos are so different.
Yeah, I saw some of your stuff. Yeah, when you sent me your reel, it has some music. Yeah, it's totally different because it's like music videos. Like every acting bit you do is almost like a sound bite, but it's nonverbal. Like you just, it's like a physical sound bite, right?
Yeah, it's all improv, and I wrote those treatments, so like I knew exactly what we were going for.
Sure.
And we made that happen ourselves, and we knew what the result was going to be.
Yeah.
With that film, I had I was the actor, and when my job was done, my job was done. Keep me updated. Let me know when it's out so I can help promote.
Sure.
And I just felt like I was able to give the best I was able to give at that point in time with no training and anything like that. So I was like, okay,
that's cool. Did they fly you out, or did you just fly yourself out because you wanted
I was
to be
living
part
in
of
New Jersey, so I just drove.
Oh,
it was like an
okay,
hour.
So not that far.
It was an hour,
and
it was great. It was a really good friend of mine at the time was living there, and I just stayed at his house, spent the weekend with him, and we had just like ran around Philly like the two idiots we were when we would hang out. And
so this was right after you got out of the band type stuff?
I was still in the band at that point.
No shit.
Yeah, I was in a band called 18th and Addison for almost 10 years. And while I was on tour in April of 2017, I auditioned in the hotel room and I got the role that like the next day they called me, and then I started filming in July. I had to grow a beard and everything, but it's just like for me, I grow facial hair really quick, so it wasn't too crazy, but I was like, how much longer do you need this? Because it's driving me nuts.
That's awesome. No, I thought it was really good.
Cool.
I think also I know what you're talking about when a cinematographer, is kind of coaching or helping a director. Just because I've shot stuff for other people.
Oh, it's great.
They've been like, all right, hey, they're telling somebody to do this, and like, you're like, hey, just for the shot, it makes it a better shot if they open up to the camera a little bit more and look this way instead of them just doing this, right?
Yes.
Right. If you have the chest open up and they look that way, then you've got a little bit better. I'm telling the director that, and they're like, oh, I guess you're right.
Well, because they can't see everything. They have so much to worry about.
Well, and it depends on what type of director they are. Like if they're an actor's director, they're concerned about their performance and the delivery,
which was definitely the case.
They're not necessarily concerned with like the framing. Or like the blocking and stuff like that. That's not like their top priority. And it is part of the cinematographer's job sometimes to just be like, no, the composition is part of it's your job. Like getting the shot composed properly, getting the proper characters where they need to be and make it look sexy and make it all make sense. Yeah. That is a cinematographer's job, no matter what anybody
to speak up and say it.
Yeah. I mean, there are some directors that they are very honed in on composition, and so the cinematographer just facilitates what they want. But I would say that's not as common.
Yeah, I've kind of seen a little mix of both. I've seen the actor's director who just has his eye on everything, and nothing gets past them.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's crazy to where I'm like, how'd you notice that? That was such a tiny thing. Like they'd be like, hey, you were just doing this. You blinked a little too many times. Can you maybe not blink? We want this character. I just did in a recent film called Prisoner of the Dawn. I don't know when that's coming out or anything, but that was like my first thing sort of back to acting. Like I was really testing the waters with it to see, like, I was like, I got to go and make sure I still love this before I commit to it. And it happened like right away. I ended up becoming like, I'm not necessarily extremely proud of what I was able to do in that moment, or for the scenes that I was a part of, but he was so happy and saw every little detail of my face, of my hands, of my hair, of everything, and was still focused on his own lines. Was still focused on his own delivery, his own
he was directing and acting,
and his own response and everything. Like it was very, it felt very comfortable.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, cool. Like I know I can be better, and I'm gonna get better. And I was just honored that he gave me the opportunity to realize that was there. Because then I dove right in again, head first, and just started going crazy with it. Because now I'm like in a really cool spot where it's like I feel the same passion for this as I felt for music when I started, so which I thought was gone for a little while. I was kind of scared. I was like, man, like what else do I care enough to chase? I love working. What else do I care enough to give that much of my energy to? And at the time, music wasn't the answer anymore. So I was like, I got to flip this a little bit.
I get what you're talking about. When I was doing metal bands and stuff, it's such a collaborative process that I had friends that were musicians that were doing metal they were recording and writing all their own stuff by themselves.
Yeah.
Program the drums, write the guitar riffs, they do the vocals, just like a one-man band thing. And that was never going to be satisfying to me as a metal musician because I loved like writing a riff and then the excitement of hearing what it sounded like with whatever my drummer came up with at practice.
Yeah,
like
that's cool.
That was like the magic kind of happens at practice where you're writing stuff together.
Yeah.
That was I feel like I don't think I was aware of it at the time, but it definitely in retrospect I'm like that was one of the really special things about being a musician that and so I love writing, directing, just making movies, but the magic happens on set. I mean, that's where I feel the most exhilarated. Same. And I do all this other stuff to facilitate those couple days. Yeah. Like for real, like just like we have like we're doing Abandoning Tychicus is the other short that I'm doing, and like building the costume, right? This is a sci-fi thing, and she's on a desert planet and cyberpunk-ish, So it's like we got to have this costume that looks like it's from the future. So I'm like trying to find the best items that go together that at the same time feel like they're from the future and at the same time I can afford, right? Yeah. Right? And I'm not spending a lot of time manufacturing stuff, right? Yeah. We're finding things that go together, but I'm spending all this time putting that together. All right, just so that we can go out into the fucking desert and shoot these shots that look like she's on a desert planet. Right. Yeah, we're gonna dirty them up anyway. Right. Yeah. So but it's all for those couple days. I know, right? But it's everything. It's the coolest thing. That when you get those performances that are just like, holy shit, like this is gonna move me. Yeah. There's nothing like that. There's nothing like capturing that with all the pieces, right? Yeah, like there are guys that are like camera guys, and they buy their camera and they just go out and shoot stuff like bugs on a flower or some bullshit like that, and they just love their camera, and that's enough for them. It is nowhere near enough for me. Sure. Yeah. All the pieces have to be there. We have to have a script. We have to have an actual fully fleshed out idea. We got to have an actor that freaking fits the role. We got to have the aesthetics of all the things, the costuming, the colors, the location. All those things have to be aligned before I really want to break out that camera and shoot this motherfucker. Yeah. Like that's just how I operate. That's how I would operate the same exact way. Yeah. And those are the questions I normally ask if something is offered to me. Like, how are we doing it? Because I want to know, because I can approach things better for the general thing that we're going for if I can get inside. Just like a director needs to get inside an actor's head, I want to be inside the director's head too, without overthinking it, because you don't want to seem like you're acting, right? So like, but how can we collaborate here and really do this painting together and then bring it to life? And that's a thing I think a lot of people don't recognize how much goes in. If you're not in it, you don't know. It's like we were talking about music. If you don't go to the shows, you don't know that it's not a bunch of people just hitting each other, that there's a communal thing there, and there is a respect that's supposed to be there. When it's not, that's just a couple people that are assholes. But when you look at movies, you see some people are so quick to, oh, that sucked, and this is terrible, nobody goes see it. It's like, you have no idea the work that went into that, though. You know, it's a really interesting thing. I can't remember who it was. It was some filmmaker on YouTube. There's a million of them. But I'm one of them. Talking shit on what I am. Oh, that's me. That's me. But he was talking about when he was in film school, first day of film school, what they did is they had cameras, like just some DSLRs or whatever, and it was like probably 10 students in this like intro to film like class, right? Gave everybody a DSLR. You have all weekend to shoot something, edit it together, bring it in. They don't know anything about anything, right? But they've got just a DSLR with a simple zoom lens. And the professor takes the same camera with the same lens and goes out and shoots something and shows it to all of them so that everybody watches their stuff together, and then they all watch his film last. Yeah. And his, of course, looks fucking gorgeous. Yeah, yeah. Like all the pieces are there, like the composition, the costume, the acting, the location, all of those things are happening. But people, because they were just handed a camera and they don't know anything about making movies, they're just thinking, he's using the same camera as us, but why does his look so much better? And they asked him, like, what are we doing wrong? And he says, everything. He's like,
Okay.
filmmaking is everything.
Awesome.
Like, it's not just the camera. It's, it's not just the actor.
Yeah.
It's not just the location. It's not just the costumes, right? Like, I think a lot about, like something that I kind of learned from Francis Ford Coppola. The first podcast, me and Kane talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula, and what his philosophy with that film was the costumes are the sets. And I really like that philosophy as an independent filmmaker because it's way
really
more affordable to do.
Yeah.
It's way more affordable to do, right? You invest your money in the costumes and have all the color palette of all of those things work together, right? Or contrast, work against each other. Yeah, you can do a lot with that. And, if they're in a location, like, getting all of those things to kind of work together and have a similar color palette, now it looks like this production.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been taking that philosophy, and that's kind of what we're doing with Abandoning Tychicus, right? She's in a futuristic space suit, and there's a spaceship out and we're in the desert, and that's it. Those are the only two things in the fucking shot, right?
It's simplicity.
Right, really simplicity, but the kind of like there's a cohesion of the aesthetics of those two things. They look like they come from the same world, right? So they tell a story. Both of those things have a story going with them, right? And I, as a indie filmmaker, I've just really adopted that. Like, okay, I can't afford to build sets. Okay, we can't afford to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot,
right? And there's certain things we can't afford to do, but the things we can afford to do is how we spend our money on costumes.
right?
Right. And so when I did my second film, Epiphany at the Honky Chateau, we shot with a cinematographer who was really talented. And when we was for a competition, and we won the competition, and everyone was like, wow, your cinematography was really good. But the thing that they didn't realize, it wasn't just the cinematography. It was the locations we chose. It was the costumes, the colors, right? All of, yes, the lighting was beautiful. The shot composition was great, and it looked very professional. It sounded very professional, all of that. But no one's noticing the fact that your two truckers in the bar are dressed to look the fucking part.
Yeah.
Right?
It tells the story before the story begins.
And there's something there, and no one complimented me on the costumes, even though I bought them myself and made a lot of them, actually. We had some help on some of the costumes, but most of the stuff I did myself, and no one's complimenting that because they're just accepting it.
Right. They just accept it as that's just a part of it. That's what you're supposed to do.
But if those costumes had not been what they were, people would have been like, okay, yeah, it's beautifully shot, but what the fuck is he wearing? Right? Like, no, I mean, there's I've seen short films where you have characters that are wearing they're all showing up wearing whatever they chose to bring, and the director has no control over what they're wearing. And then you're like, the guy's wearing a Hurley shirt. It clearly doesn't fit the rest of what's happening with the costume. None of this was coordinated.
Yeah.
Right? And people don't realize that as an indie filmmaker, that's something you do have control over, and it's really cheap.
It's cheap, and it's so important.
It is. It is. But
so important.
But yeah, it's those things, like all of that stuff. You could have great costumes, great cinematography. If the performance sucks, it still doesn't fucking matter.
That's why, like you said, that professor, it's like it all matters. It's everything. Everything matters. That's one of Jack Nicholson's things. He said when it comes to his work, his motto for work was everything counts. Everything matters. And that, you're so right. Every little detail.
And what you're talking about, the guy saying that you're blinking too much or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, those little things matter. If it's a character that doesn't fucking blink, if they're fucking sociopathic or whatever, or maybe someone's saying a line and what that person's doing in the background is distracting.
Yes.
It could be something as simple as that. It's like, stop doing what you're doing, because you're just in the shot for context.
Yeah.
You're not really, this person's carrying the scene.
Yes.
Well, that was the point. You're going to draw away from them if you're blinking all the fucking time.
And that was the point, and I was very, very fortunate for him to tell me why. To tell me why it mattered. Some people won't tell you why it matters, and for me personally, I need to know why it matters.
I need to know.
Yeah, I need to know, because if you tell me why he doesn't blink, then I go, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
but if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
just saying it,
It's fucking sociopath.
you're going to start seeing me thinking about it. I'm going to start making up a story while I'm working, and that's not okay. Now it looks like I'm trying.
Yeah.
And it was great. He was just like, because he was like, first of all, I need you to talk a little tiny bit slower. You're playing a man of power. People with power and confidence, they don't ramble. They don't talk fast. He goes, I could tell you're also from the East Coast. That's what he said, because he was also from like New Jersey or New York. So he called me out. He was like, I could tell. Like I was like, you just naturally speak quick. And I was like,
because you don't want to be interrupted.
Yeah, I think maybe it was a little nerves too, since it was my first film back.
I think it's a fast-paced East Coast thing.
Yeah,
right. As you talk fast because you don't want to be interrupted.
Yeah,
like,
and you eat your food fast because you don't want someone to take it from you.
Yeah.
So it's the same vibe. Like it's
New
like
York,
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, and it was great because he was like, "You're blinking a lot, and it looks like you're unsure. Don't blink. Stare at your eye line directly, and do not break that eye. Kind of like we're doing right now. I was just locked in.
Yeah, for sure.
And once we did that, me and the other actors suddenly had this synergy start to happen, and it was such a short scene. It was like 4 lines. It changed the whole
dynamic. Yeah, it really does. It really does. And it probably like it's weird how those subtleties can command subliminal power that people might not be picking up on initially.
Right. Yeah. You know? And it was a funny thing because like I left that day, and that scene that he called out the blinking was great because it was actually a scene that got added because we did so well with the first scene together. He was like, do you mind if I write a scene right now and add this in? I was like, yeah. I was like, well, that's cool. Good. Like, that means you're proud of it. Like, I'm unsure and like freaking out because I hadn't been on a set since 2017. So this was 2021. So I was like, oh my God, I just hope I'm doing a good job, you know, and I hope you can't tell that I'm thinking that, you know? So it was kind of just trying to get my feet wet again. And he was so gracious with his time and patient and very helpful with telling me, like, kind of, okay, this is where your eye line is. I need you to pay attention right here. He would, like, hold up his hand and be like, talk to my hand. That's where he's going to be. Yeah. And it was great. It was so helpful because then suddenly I had a mission. I had a destination to reach. Sure. Instead of me just kind of throwing things at the wall and hoping something stayed. You know, it was great because then I was like, oh, no, this will stay. And we wouldn't be adding a scene if you weren't proud of what I was doing for your film. Sure. You know, so I'm delivering and doing my job right now. And it helped me leave with a little bit more confidence to where I was like, okay, I feel good auditioning for somebody else now. Yeah. You know, and then it's just been, ever since, it's just been like, I love auditioning. I'm probably one of like those weirdos who actually enjoys the auditioning process. Even if I get rejected, I'm like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to practice.
That was honestly, if I had pissed you off by not casting you in Shoegazer, I probably wouldn't have brought you onto the podcast.
But, you did not piss me off at all.
But when we did talk on the phone, when you by the way, throwing this out there for anybody who's watching that's from the Las Vegas film scene, that's auditioning or whatever, I'm having a moment right now about my appreciation because you auditioned and you did a killer performance. We actually had several people all audition. They were all amazing. But your performance was very much its own take, and you definitely
thanks.
Understood the whole like I'm supposed to be looking down because it's called fucking Shoegazer. Like you definitely understood
committed
that.
to the feet.
I loved it. And but you know, I don't want to say too much about it because it'll ruin the movie. Of course. But we talked on the phone. I was like so indecisive about it. I don't being all vulnerable and open. I hope you don't mind. But I was so torn about who to pick, and I was like, fuck, man, like these are all really good. We gotta do second auditions because I don't know. Yeah. I don't know now. Right. And so I did that with all three of you guys.
Oh, cool. Good.
And just because I was like, I gotta see you know what the take is gonna be, and that ended up being the deciding factor. But when we talked on the phone, you were like, just thank you for giving me direction on this because. And you said that like you just don't get that a lot. And for me, it's all about the creative process. Maybe it sounds dickish, but even if I don't end up picking you, we're still creating together, and this is fun for me. Right. And
that audition for that film doesn't have to be the last thing we talk about. That's something I think a lot of people get worked up over.
Also, and a big determining factor for me as a director is actors who are easy to work with. Like just crew or anybody in general.
Anyone. If somebody's days.
If somebody, dude, filmmaking's this is something that I don't think some people understand. And so I'm gonna say it. We're putting it on the record here. Filmmaking already goes to shit so often, right? Does. So many things go fucking wrong all the time. And sometimes they're things that you could have done something about if you'd known about them or you'd thought about it. But you care, especially if you're an independent filmmaker like myself, and you're like myself, like a director and cinematographer.
Yeah.
So I'm shooting it and directing it, right? When you're wearing all those hats, you do miss things, right? If I'm working with somebody, cast, crew, whatever, and they're creating problems,
we don't need any more.
and I've fired people on every film set that I've worked on.
Really?
Absolutely.
That sucks to have to do.
And some of them were friends, which sucked even worse. Because you're like, dude, you're my homie, and you're making this real hard for me right now.
That's hard. Wow,
right?
Man. I feel for you. That's
it
really
sucks.
tough.
It sucks. But what am I got 1 day to do this, and you're making it really hard.
It comes from music too, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're in a band and you just want to enjoy being on the road, which is already hard enough when you're not making a lot of money.
Yeah.
And by a lot of money, I mean just enough to pay your bills.
Well, every film that I've done, because they're all short films, are all in the red. You don't make money off short films.
Right.
So I just keep going into the deficit of like, and I'm dumping all my own private money into the movie. Right?
Yes.
So my policy, it was weird because I had to tell myself this on my first film, and I just kind of ended up just becoming part of the philosophy later on. But I had to remind myself on my first film, I was like, I'm not getting paid for this, and I'm throwing down my own money. I dropped $3,000 on my first short film.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, I'm in the red on this. If someone's making it not fun for me, because it's already going to have moments that aren't fun. If someone's making it not fun for me, they're gone.
Yeah, you can't have that. And same from an actor's perspective. If there's someone on set who's just distracting and taking you, because a lot of times for me, like, especially now that I finally started taking acting classes and I realized my way of getting to the point, getting to what I need to do in order to make sure I'm doing my job, is sometimes I need a few minutes on the set. Even if the camera's already rolling, just give me like a few minutes of just silence real quick. Let me find this thing so that I can act on it.
Yeah.
And I can give you what you're looking for. Or at least we can get close and then we can build off of it. At least we give, here's something to add.
That's you trying because you want to offer something. That's not you being difficult.
Well, that's my point is like if that's my way and you understand that as a director and a writer and you're like, yeah, totally, let's give it a second. But there's someone who's causing a problem or being distracting or complaining or their phone's going off the whole time. And it puts your attention there, it's like, okay, well, now I need 10 minutes. Now I need 15 minutes. And those 15 minutes cost money for people.
My first movie, we were doing second auditions for our female lead. And she was really good, but it was a matter of finding, it was a romance. So it was a matter of finding a guy who has chemistry with her.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and another thing that gets overlooked.
Yeah. And there's a guy that I had that wanted to be involved in it, and he went to film school, and he was excited to be part of the project, whatever. And he, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do audition. He's like, do you want me to be there? And I'm like, no, I don't need you to be there. Like, I'll be fine. And he ended up showing up anyway, even though I told him not to be there. And then made a bunch of dirty jokes to the actress, and I fired him right after she left.
Wow, yeah, that's not cool.
I was just like, dude, her emotions are my resource. And you're sabotaging them with dirty jokes.
Yeah,
you're making her uncomfortable. You're making her uncomfortable. She does not know us.
Yeah.
The last thing she needs is a dirty joke from two fucking dudes that are single.
Exactly.
That's the last thing she fucking needs, man.
And now she's closed off. She doesn't want to be vulnerable.
And if her performance was amazing, maybe she won't take the role. Because someone made her uncomfortable. Yeah. Luckily, that wasn't the case.
Good.
Yeah.
But that sucks. And that sucks that you have to go through that. And
I don't feel like I'm the victim. I feel bad for him. But at the same time, I feel bad for him because I don't like having to tell people,
I know.
We're done. You know what I mean?
It's hard.
I feel bad every fucking time. But at the same time, it's like, what am I going to do? Am I going to sacrifice my project to make you comfortable?
Right. I know.
I can't do that, right?
I did that for years in music.
Did you really?
For years. I was always trying to make sure whoever was coming on tour with us, because at the time, as my wife and I, we were touring, and she was playing bass, I was playing guitar and singing, and she was singing as well. And we would hire a band. And if there was ever someone who came out on the road that just was disrespectful to her, they were gone. Wow. But that wasn't always the case. In the beginning, it would be like, okay, well, listen, we have the rest of this tour we have to get through. We have this record. We're in the middle of this. We were always in a tight spot.
Sounds awful, man.
Yeah, and really, it was just bullshit. I should have just been like, I don't give a fuck if we have to leave the tour or you have to play bass, or I have to play bass. At the time, she was also playing guitar. I was just like, we need to be more flexible here if we're going to be able, if we need to send somebody home. And that did start to happen finally, where we were like, okay, like we got to stop letting our goals control the present tense of what's happening. Like we got to get rid of that.
A lot of actors, just filmmakers, struggle with that too. You know,
Yeah,
like
it's
that's
tough.
just part of it, because the people with the resources and the gate key, the people that have the key to the gate,
Yeah.
right, that let you into success.
Yeah, and it's
Right?
hard. It's hard when you got the things finally rolling, right? You're finally going, and it's like it took so long to get to that point. Oh, and now I got to find a new bandmate, or I got to find a new actor, I got to find a new cinematographer, a new this, a new that. Right now, I don't want to deal with that. Now we're already going. It's like, no, get rid of that negativity right away, because that will just affect the rest of the process.
I can't focus. I'm too.
Same.
I'm too. I almost said insecure, but I think it might be sensitive. It might be both. But
I say sensitive for myself as well.
yeah, I will internalize it, and it'll echo in my mind, and I won't be able to focus on what I'm doing.
And then your personal life is affected. That's not good.
No,
Because of
not
somebody
at all.
else.
But this is my like happy place, making movies. Like for me, like I'm not getting paid to do this thing. So if I let somebody in that's going to ruin it, it sabotages my happy.
Yeah.
You know,
That's not all right.
And
yeah.
I think anybody who has been on a set with me knows how fun they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I am in my happy place, so I'm just like so stoked all the time.
Yeah,
right.
that's so good.
And mind you, I'm not so stoked that I'm like blind to a bad performance. No, we are crafting it. We are working to
Sure.
get what we need.
Yeah.
But everyone would always laugh when we did Clemency Boulevard, which is my bigger short film production. It'll be on YouTube here in a couple months. It has one more film festival to do. Everybody started laughing because the word that I would always use is I would say the phrase, "Oh, that was sex." Like I would, if something was like delivering, if a performance was fucking delivering, or a shot, like a moving shot or whatever,
Right.
like oh, it's sex. Everyone just
That's
bust
so
the
funny.
fuck up.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, oh, that's
Right.
great. That was so
Right.
good.
And our camera operator, Wayne Gassman, he was like, every director's got their thing, man. They all have their thing that they say.
Yeah, that's so funny. But it's cool and it's good because you got to protect that, right? Like, and that's where I'm at currently with stuff. Like, I just really, like you were saying, like when we were talking on the phone, it's the opportunity is everything. Because that to me is like cool. Like even if it's just an audition and we don't get to work, it's like we don't get to work together on it. I go, well, cool. I did that part of the job. That felt good. I got my practice in. I know what I'm capable of, and I know what needs work.
Yeah,
and
a
lot of people don't like to admit.
Well, and I
certain
think a
things
lot
need
of
work.
people also don't know that, like, not getting a role. At least I'll say this as a director. You know, and I don't think I don't ever really hear directors say it, so I'll say it to kind of let some actors off the hook. Sometimes you're not getting the role because you're not right for the role, not because your performance was bad.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I think I would like a lot of actors to know that.
Yeah, because
You
that
know?
would help them. That is
Absolutely.
nothing but help. Like your confidence is everything, and that's the whole point. There's great actors out there who didn't get the role of I don't know. I think it was was it? I think it was Jack Nicholson. I'm bringing him up again. He's like one of my all-time favorites. I think with Jack Nicholson, he was supposed to get Al Pacino's part in The Godfather, and he just wasn't right for it. And I don't know if that was his call or the casting. I don't know, but like I'm sure a part of it was probably his call and being like it should be someone more.
I'll
authentic,
say
like-
this too, and I think this goes for feature films, but it's way more noticeable in short films. Mm-hmm. When your short film is, Shoegazer's 3.5 pages, right? Or Banding Taichikis is 14 pages. But when you're doing short films, when you write it, you might feel like the character's fully developed in your head, but then you don't realize down the line after you get some auditions that you're like, maybe this isn't as apparent as I'm making it in the script because we're only spending 4 pages with the guy. That's
it. Yeah.
Right? It's not like, it's 4 pages of dialogue, but it's not like the actor has a lot of time with that character's backstory, with their history, their relationships with other people.
That's why I was so thankful for you calling me.
Oh.
I swear, because that was like awesome. Like, this is cool. Because, a lot of people won't take that time. And for me, I was like, well, cool, this is someone who really cares.
Shoegazer is all dialogue from, it's a one-man show. But other short films,
and anybody who's auditioning for Abandoning Tychicus knows this. I write separate monologues for those characters because a lot of times if they're a character that's only in scenes where they're talking to someone else, they can't act that.
Sure.
And so I'll write a separate. It costs me nothing to write it, right? And if I already feel like I know the character, and it doesn't really cost me an enormous amount of time either, so I'll write a separate monologue.
Right.
Like here, you can read it, but you're talking to someone else for 5 pages, so you don't know what this person sounds like when they're talking by themselves, right? So I'll write something that's the same vibe, the same tone, exhibits their emotions, maybe says something about the story.
Right.
That's not essential to the story, but it expounds on it because I do have a lot of that backstory stuff in my head.
Yeah.
But I'll write that stuff so they've got something to chew on without needing someone there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
very helpful.
And I think in feature films where you have characters that only have 1 or 2 scenes, you should do that. You should write an extra monologue for that character.
Yeah, give them a little something.
Give them something to chew on. Write a backstory and give it to them too. Like, this is who this character is. This is where they came from. It's not in the story, but I need you to know it. I know it.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt for me to tell you.
Yes.
Right?
That's a huge thing.
And I think in short films, I think it's easy to underestimate maybe it's overestimate. I don't know. It's easy to take it for granted that it's right there. They're doing this. Person has Clemency Boulevard has characters that have no lines, but they're doing things.
Matters. Yeah.
So that audition, I need to give them something to do or say for the audition that's not just them scrambling for someone's wallet or some bullshit.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, they need to do something for the audition because even that person's got to be right for the role. Let's say somebody's like a mugger or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? They need to be threatening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And even though they don't have any lines, you got to be scared for your main character that just got mugged.
You got to feel that fear.
And so, for the, our muggers that are in Clemency Boulevard, I wrote stuff for them, that's not in the script.
Right.
But and backstories too, and that type of stuff.
But it is helpful. It's the same as if you're playing a waiter or a waitress and you're only in that one scene. Okay, well, where am I, a waiter or a waitress? Because if I'm a waitress at an IHOP in Florida, it's much different than being a waitress at an IHOP in Manhattan.
Yeah,
we move a lot faster in New York. We move a lot slower in Florida. What's the real thing? Where am I from? What have I done?
I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, that's cool.
And it's just such a little thing, but it's a big deal sometimes to the vibe, because you do see that confusion sometimes.
I think for me too, with my short films, there is a whole world there as far as I'm concerned. We just don't have the money to fucking tell that story, right? So, in Abandoning Tychicus, right? The one of the planets that we're on, Tychicus 1, there's a whole backstory to that planet, not in the fucking script.
Yeah, yeah.
But I need to know that.
Your actor needs to know that.
And some of that backstory is a little comical to me, but it's not even in the script. But it's funny. It's intentionally that because it's funny to me.
Yeah.
Why is the planet called that? There's a bit of a joke on society in that. That's not even in the fucking movie.
Right. Yeah. But that's something someone will uncover down the line after a few views of it.
I hope so. But I guess Tarantino says, a big Tarantino fan. He says, they don't need to know, but I need to know.
Yeah.
And they need to know that I know.
Yeah. Well, that's a big approach I take with the novel, too, is not everything has to be explained.
Yeah.
There's this story. It's a horror story. It's gross. It's got so many moments that are just disgusting, and I'm so excited about that. But they're not just disgusting for the sake of being disgusting. It's trying to throw some color on it a little bit. But at the end of the day, the book's about shadow work.
Interesting.
And it's deeper than just having a nightmare, like a drug-fueled nightmare. So it's it goes a little deeper, which is why it's taken me a million drafts, because I want to make sure that it's not spoon feeding the reader. I want to give a reader or a viewer of a film that I'm a part of, I want give them credit. Let's not insult their intelligence. You can feel it, and even if you don't feel it and you're just entertained, that's okay. Let's go that route too. Sure. That's fine. But let's leave this open to where everybody can try and enjoy it, but it still has its niche. This book's definitely still got a niche. It's like horror novel.
Yeah.
And that's where it'll live. But it kind of starts off like a road trip with a few friends, and it's a feel-good story in the beginning, and then it all just goes downhill. and it just keeps going downhill. And how do we color that and explain that there's something deeper here than just sex, drugs, rock and roll, making movies, this and that? Like it's all of that, but what's underneath all of it? Because that stuff's just like the surface.
Sure.
So how do we color that with something that's a little bit more disgusting?
I think it's. I don't know if it's like this for other writers, because I mean I don't know, but for me, like, even when you start with every good story has your main exterior goal, right? And then there's an interior goal with that main character that has to kind of run in parallel with that. I find when I write the exterior goal, the interior goal often, not all the time, but often comes very naturally.
Yeah.
Because that's the personal part. Like I'm writing a feature film called Horse Girl right now, right? None of the characters' goals in that movie, because it's like a Tarantino meets horror film, none of the things in that movie have anything to do with anything personal with me.
Right.
But some of the things going on with who they are do.
That's exactly the same thing that happened. I didn't mean for this to be a book about shadow work. It's just supposed to be the companion piece to the debut Black Mansions EP.
Oh,
that's
for
all
real?
It's supposed to be.
That's fucking cool, though.
because it's a concept album right out the gate. I just was like, we should tell a story so that this can fit into film and this can fit into animation down the road, and we can have more fun with it. Like the people we idolize, I guess, for lack of a better term, artistically, like we love that approach, like that Bowie approach. There's always a story. There's always something deeper. And I was like, you know what? Nobody's done a book though. And I know not everyone's going to read it, but I want to do it. I want to be able to say we did that, but I want it to be really good, you know. So
the cool thing is that like, because it's attached to music that's already getting some attention, like that gives the book. I mean, you've never written a novel before, as far as I know.
No.
So it gives it a kind of a ramp, like a launching pad.
I think so too. I think it helps, and maybe it'll get some people who maybe want to start reading but don't know where to begin. Maybe this is like, oh, this is a story I've already kind of know. You know, now I've already kind of started that story. Let me it's just a deeper view on it.
Sure.
So it's a deeper story. It's got multiple characters and all these other little cool, colorful things that are going on in the background of every scene or chapter. But it started to become a thing about shadow work and taking care of yourself inwardly. But it's still got to have that darkness that our band projects, you know, because that's what we love. We love that like dark and cool vibe. It's fun, you know. It's a lot more fun. I love
it too.
And I love it in movies. Like I love like a good 90s thriller movie where all the colors are kind of white and blue the whole time. You know, like we were talking before, that stuff matters.
It totally matters.
It hits you a certain way, and it takes you somewhere else. Like the first Blade. Like I love watching that first Blade movie.
No shit.
Yeah, I just immediately I'm like, it's not even a nostalgic thing because it should be. But I'm always like, I watch that and I always feel like I'm watching it for the first time, and I'm just excited about it. Like I'm always like, this is so fun.
I haven't seen Blade since I was in high school, so I have no idea.
It's just it's fun. Like right out the gate, it's fun, and I'm like, that's what I want to be able to create. Even if you're reading, I hope that it reads sort of like you're watching a movie, you know, and then maybe down the road we can adapt it for something. But at the meantime, it's just a focus on that and telling this deeper story, but without putting it in there that's what he's been doing, you know, trying to make sure it's not overly obvious.
Have you ever heard of a band called Showbread?
No.
So they're like that kind of like retro rock, raw rock type thing. When, you know, White Stripes, The Vines, like all of that came out. And they had two albums that came out at the same time called Anorexia and Nervosa. And they both were, the songs were actually companions to a story that was inside the liner notes.
Awesome.
And so you would read the liner notes, read the story, and it would have like numbers for like what point in the song this thing in the story is happening. And no joke, at the beginning of the liner notes, it says, turn the lights off, put the music on.
That's so cool.
Get a flashlight and read this while you're listening.
That's the coolest thing ever.
And there was a moment in one of the songs where there's like I can't remember. It's been over a decade since I listened to it. But it's a story of these two different sisters, Anorexia and Nervosa, and they both have completely different lifestyles. But you know, one's, you know, I think she's a stripper that dances on a pole over a glass floor where people are slaughtering animals.
Whoa. Wow. What the fuck? That's amazing.
It's wild,
That's
right? So
crazy.
that's anorexia, and then nervosa is her sister, who's like this nun who's like preoccupied with like religious anxiety.
Wow. Polar opposite.
And so they have
sides of the
completely
spectrum.
different lifestyles, and it's about both of them getting it wrong.
Awesome. Wow. Is it Showbread, you said?
The name's the band is Showbread, and the two albums came out at the same time. But there's a moment in it where I think Nervosa, she encounters a bunch of different animals that talk in it. And there's a moment where she's talking to a pig, and then someone attacks the pig, and in the song you can hear them slaughtering the pig, and it's squealing in the fucking song. And I was like, what? And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Detail.
Right. It was so wild. But you look like you're from Showbread, so it's fucking funny. Their vocalist, his name's Josh Dyes. He looks a lot like you. Has a very similar look. Right? He's very much like into Trent Reznor and shit like that. So they put out a lot of albums that were really good, but I feel like Anorexia Nervosa, the last great album set that they ever came out with. But you should, if you like just like that raw, like it's like just dirty, grungy punk type stuff.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I love that.
But it's got this same element that you got. You read the story going along with it, and I think as a Christian kid at the time, it really went over my head.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, I'm looking at he's making a statement about people having religious anxiety and that still not being a path to life.
Yes.
And then people living a life of unbridled impulse and that not being a path to life either.
Yeah.
Right? And he's comparing those two things. And I think at the time, none of us really got it. But in thinking about it now, I'm like, yeah, it's easy for one on the other side to criticize the other, but the reality is both of y'all are missing
something.
You're missing the point here, right? There's something special that we're all searching for that you can't find in depravity and you can't find it in religion.
100%. Yeah.
You know, and as much as you want to think that satisfying your impulses is going to be enough to be like, you know, being essentially a nihilist or whatever, that's going to be enough. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe it's not.
Yeah,
and then people that say, well, if I just double down on my faith and I follow these things and these principles or whatever, that I'll live a happy life. You know, people that are not only miserable that are religious, but angry.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Right?
Yeah.
You know? I think, it definitely went over my head at the time. But in retrospect, I'm like, man, that's some brilliant shit.
That is really brilliant.
Yeah.
Are you actually cool if we pause for 1 second, just like, am I able to use your bathroom for
Absolutely. I do have a pause screen, and we're at 2 hours right now. I'm down to keep going if you want to keep going.
Yeah, sure.
Give me 1 second. All right, now Vegas is on fire. This is the new. I made these two different screens. I was like, what if it was in flames? Let me do some of that. So, Showbread, they're fucking wild. It's weird when there's those bands that like they're speaking on a level that, or just artists in general, speaking on a level that people don't really get until way later.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's lots of movies that was the case too, that they had a whole second life in like just people just like discovering them later on.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know, like The Thing didn't do well in theaters at all. And it's like definitely it might be my favorite Alien movie.
Yeah, I mean Halloween too.
Yeah.
Look how iconic that is now. But
Yeah,
at the time,
yeah.
like it was doing terribly when it first came out.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird that an artist will be kind of ahead of their time. We were talking about something earlier, and I wanted to touch back on it. I think we were talking about like working algorithms or some shit, like social media, all that type of stuff. And since I think it's actually advantageous for me that I actually don't know how to use all of that to some degree, because I don't get sucked into it, and I always just kind of I'm forced to lean back on, okay, is the material authentically representing something that I want to do, right? Yeah. This isn't just some movie, right? Is this something that like, no, this speaks to me. This is totally who I am, you know? And I have to lean back on that. I'm like, because the only thing that I really feel like I can trust is that the actual substance of the art is delivering.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a huge thing, and I think it gets lost when like your focus is on everything else. It's more focused on the results, and that's kind of where I got to at one point with music. Was I wanted results after years and years and years of feeling like I wasn't getting them. Yeah, because it was a painful couple years, and then it got to that point where I was just like, I've done so much, and so much of it has gone unnoticed.
Yeah,
and not that I created all of it to have it be just noticed, because it wasn't that shallow.
Art is meant to be consumed by other people, and if other people aren't consuming it,
what's happening? Then what's happening? Yeah, that's
whole,
where I got.
Art is a catharsis that provides you the opportunity to connect with other people. That's the whole fucking point of it. I mean, at least I'm not trying to minimize it, but I'm saying that is. I feel like for me, it's a fundamental functionality of my art, and it always has been. Music doesn't matter, right? When I'm playing in a band and everybody at the fucking show is bouncing or whatever, or the pit's rowdy, or
that's what we want.
that's people are digging this thing, and even better when you're playing a show and no one knew who you were before you got there.
Yeah, and you win it,
and it's hitting like that. You're like, oh, this is amazing. And with movies, it's the same way. When I show, at least these last two films that I made, Tori and Clemency Boulevard, both of them have moments. Tori has a moment where people are like, what the fuck, right? Which is exactly what I want.
You did it, yeah.
Right? Because everything that leads up to that point, people are like, oh, this is kind of a sweet conversation. Like, this is sincere. Like, this isn't a mask for anything. Like, this is something that they need to talk about. And then something bad happens, and you're like, this is not what I thought at all.
What's going on? Yeah.
And same with Clemency Boulevard. It's just like I get the response, like I got it from my mom when I showed it to her. She was like watching the movie, and then this bad thing happened. She goes, wait, what?
Yeah. Awesome.
And I was like, and it happened in the theater. And so there are some things that hit in the theater that don't necessarily hit when you're watching them by yourselves. So when you're watching it just with one or two people and it still hits, you're like, okay, no, this is actually working.
Yeah, if it can have the same effect at home on the couch through Netflix or Peacock or something, and the same as it did in a movie theater, it's like that's really special.
Absolutely. And I think so. And it's weird because if you do a film that's like a drama or whatever, where people are generally quiet for the majority of the film, you don't really know if it's hitting until those big moments happen.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you're waiting for that ultimate payoff. It's kind of like if you revert back to metalcore and hardcore, it was the breakdown. If people reacted to the breakdown, oh, good, they're listening, they're paying attention.
Yeah.
And then there's that big lyrical moment where there's like a 20, 30-person pylon on the scrawny singer who can't hold them up. And it's like, I guess this is working. That was a good lyric.
I love that. You get that line that gets everybody fucking fired up. That shit's fucking great.
So special, and it's something that, again, if you don't do it, you don't know.
Yeah.
And once you feel it, it is like a drug. And that's why for almost 15 years of my music career, that's like, I couldn't stop. I wanted to stop. And my wife was like, she was like kind of waiting for it. She's like, when is he going to really burn out? Because like, he's crazy.
she's like knitting over there. It's like, is he going to burn out eventually? Like, I got shit to do.
Yeah. Like, she's like, dude, like, I would like to do something else, as we were in the band together. So she was kind of like, when is he finally going to have enough? Like, it's like, because it was a lot like just like, you ever see Cool Hand Luke? Paul Newman's just doing that boxing match outside, and he just keeps getting up.
Yeah.
That was that. I wouldn't stop until it was too much. And then finally I was like, I know that I have other things I can go do that deserve my attention for once. And once I did that, things cleared up. It changed everything. It changed my perspective. I don't overwork anymore. And it's like I get that same high. Like that high still is there for me. Like I'm like, oh, cool. Like it doesn't need to be music and a show and a stage. Like it just needs to be something authentic, creative, collaborative. And when we're all firing on all cylinders together in that same vehicle, it's like, man, we got something.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like even in, and this sounds so cliche because people say it all the fucking time, right? But even in my darkest times in my life, art has always been available to provide a feeling of, definitely happiness, but I feel like it's more of like a feeling of like, security or like feeling like you still know yourself. So definitely. Even when things are difficult, it has provided that and ultimately been worth it. And because shit could be going really bad, and then you're just like, I was building motorcycles there for a while, right?
Awesome. That's like a dream of mine. I want to build a motorcycle so bad.
And ultimately, the culture was very toxic, and that was why I left. I hate saying that, but it was.
It's not wrong.
It was weird. We were all into cafe racers, so we were all a bunch of fucking nerds, right? We weren't your Harley guys, right? We all thought that shit was fucking stupid.
Yeah, I'm not a Harley guy either. We were
all into like
racers.
old Japanese bikes, turning them into cafe racers.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, that became cool. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing that happened in the metal scene happened in the motorcycle scene.
The rebellion.
Everybody became dicks.
Crazy.
It was so weird, and so
weird.
There was like when it first started in that I was one of the original 4 dudes that I'm tooting my own horn, but it is true, right? I was one of the original 4 dudes that started that fucking subculture in Kansas City. We were building bikes and we just kind of found each other and we started riding on Sunday mornings. And then Ian, who ran a coffee shop, he had just started a motorcycle themed coffee shop. He invited us. He's like, dude, he hadn't even opened it yet.
Yeah.
He was just roasting beans, and he was like, how about you guys come by for a cup of coffee before you do your Sunday ride? And we're like, cool. So just the 4 of us went and did that. The next Sunday, it's like 30 people.
Crazy.
It was weird.
I remember when that
word got
happened.
out that was fucking happening, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's weird. So I started pursuing movies because I was building motorcycles. I think I'd done it for like 6 or 7 years, and I was just over it because I was spending too much time by myself. Carburetors have a habit of making you be by yourself. You have to just fuck with them for so long.
Yeah.
Which I fucking hate working on carburetors, but it's essential to work on a motorcycle.
It's kind of important.
That's awful. You need gas in the engine.
I gotta go somewhere.
Yeah. But anyways, ended up just getting tired of being alone doing that because I'm all about collaborative processes. That's really that's where the juice is as far as I'm concerned, and so I started pursuing movies, and
so cool.
And so I was pursuing that, but then the motorcycle subculture was still going on.
Yeah,
I was at the coffee shop having a sandwich, and my car was parked there. It was like a Friday night, and they're gonna have their bike night where they block off the street and start a bunch of mayhem, whatever.
Right.
But one of the dudes, James, who was one of the original 4, saw me walking out, and he goes, "Is that your car?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You gotta fucking move your car, man. There's only gonna be bikes." And I was like, You were one of the original 4 dudes with me that started this thing.
Crazy. Yeah. Just flipped
and now
on
you've become a product of the thing that we thought was fucking stupid.
Yeah.
It you became a dick. And it was like, it was weird to watch it happen. And it was like, I honestly didn't expect it because we were all fucking losers.
Yeah.
So I didn't expect
I
didn't expect the freaking cool kids table bullshit to happen, but it totally fucking
That's kind of how I felt when with the music scene. It started to feel like that. Like that metalcore scene was like just because of the people I was around, some of it got on me, and I was like, I think back of like how I was at 15, and I'm like,
there's definitely. They can't see how you're dressed, but you're dressed in a cool way. Like it's part of it, like aesthetics and being cool. Like that is part of the expression.
Yeah, if it feels good for you, yeah,
yeah. But there also is another aspect of it of like where people start to adopt an arrogance.
Yeah, and
or an
sometimes
ego.
Unintentionally, like it's an arrogance for sure. Definitely seeped in on me big time. And as I took the time to myself, I was realizing a lot of that was insecurity because I realized I wasn't getting the results that I felt like I deserved. And then I had to sit there and go, well, do I? Do I deserve that? Like, let me think for a minute. And I thought back and I was like, no. I was like, not yet.
That's heavy, dude.
Yeah, and it was a long 2-3 years or so of doing, honestly, COVID, when that happened, when we had that first lockdown in 2020, and I had nothing else going on besides like co-writes through Zoom. It was like the best thing ever for me because I was able to really just sit with myself for hours and just think, and I was like, are you happy with who you are right now? And I was like, no, I don't like my attitude right now. I was like, I got a bad attitude. I'm like, I'm not the kindest person when people are supportive, and that's stupid. Like, it was so crazy to think like that. And I'm like, but where did this come from? And as I dug back, I'm like, wow, I know exactly when this happened and where it came from. And then it was just, okay, change that. And it took me nothing at that point. It was like, that's just off the table. That's not going to happen anymore because you don't realize it because it's the environment you're trapped in. And when that's all you haven't left your home state aside.
I think it's
touring.
when something is a cultural norm, like the normal's not going to be challenged, even if it is toxic, or even maybe we shouldn't use the word toxic, even if it's just something that's not necessarily helpful.
just not helpful. Because it definitely wasn't toxic, but it's definitely not helpful.
It doesn't necessarily have to be like, that's such a buzzword, right? Everybody's using toxic, like everyone's toxic and no one is, right? Like, and like y'all are toxic, but I'm not.
But not
that's
me.
That's like the quintessential social media narrative right now.
I know. It's
right?
like, no, we've all got something we need to work on.
And I just like, I don't know. I had to kind of address some things with myself since I got out here because I'm spending a lot of time by myself, which actually happened during COVID too.
Yeah.
When I was spending a lot of time by myself, a lot of stuff started to come out that I didn't have time to deal with before.
Exactly. That was the whole point. You don't realize, like, man, I'm still in this era of my life. The band changed. Yes. The music is different. Yes. The clothing is different. Yes.
Yeah.
The career trajectory looks a tiny bit different, but is it really? You know, and you sit back and you're like, no, it's not. And suddenly you're kind of like, I suddenly don't feel like I belong in my own house. And then I was
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Kind of like I felt like that was my domain for so long, music, because that was all I was doing.
Oh, house figuratively.
Yeah, figuratively. Okay. Like I felt like I feel like I don't belong in my own. Like I built this and I should
notice on the door. Like, you're not cool anymore, so you're being evicted.
Get out of here. Pack your shit. You're out the first of the month.
But I'm wearing my Converge shirt, and they're like,
"What do you mean?
You're a poser. Get the fuck out."
Yeah, it was a very interesting time to kind of feel like you almost didn't have a place in the thing you were building for yourself. It was I was on tour in 2018, and I remember that was when it first set in. I told my wife at the time, I was like, that should have been my last tour. But I kept going, and I kept going.
Okay, you and I are similar in this way because I have a habit of sticking around in things that longer than I should.
Yeah, it's a hard habit to break.
I don't know if I've ever broken it. I mean, I move on to something new, but then in retrospect, I'm like, man, I should have walked away from that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? It'll be that way in like just
I've done that,
me being connected to people or a job even. Like I was a social worker for 9 years.
I remember you telling me that.
And I don't know if any of that was really like, if there was ever a time where like, this is a good place for me to be. You know what I mean?
know.
Like, I was
tricky.
doing it because I had this whole story in my head about who I was. That I was this kind of like, humanitarian type person. And that was the story that I wanted to believe about myself. And it's when you're like, I mean, mind you, when you're a social worker, your clients do test you. And when you're popping off on your clients and you're still saying that you're a humanitarian, in retrospect, you're like, maybe I'm not the thing that I think I am, right?
Yeah, it makes you question things. That's how I felt with music, is that was all I thought I was. I thought that was all I had to offer. And so I really latched on. And when it started to feel like those things were starting to fall by the wayside a little bit, no matter what I did, things weren't working the way I was hoping that they would work or the way that I had planned that they would work.
Sure.
And going off of advice from trusted people that you pay to give you that advice.
Yeah.
You think like, okay, cool, I'm doing all the right things because so-and-so is like, yeah, whatever, And then you start realizing like, none of this is, there's just something else that's out of my control is making sure that this isn't going to happen. And I told my wife, I was like, even if I got the level of success that I wanted by the age that I wanted it, I wouldn't have been happy anyway. Like I would not have been ready for it, and I wouldn't have been happy regardless. Like because the world's gonna go the way the world was gonna go. And it was like, it was one of those things where then I started thinking like, okay, maybe with the way I'm pursuing music, my approach to it is just like a safety blanket. To some people that's taking a risk, but to me it's like what I've been doing since I was a little kid. Since I was literally 9 years old, I started writing songs with my best friend. Like
sure.
So it wasn't new to me, and to me at a certain point, I'm like, oh no, I am playing it safe because I won't leave this. Why won't I leave this borderline abusive relationship
with metal,
with music, just music in general? I get out of here, and I finally did. And when I did, and I started doing other stuff, I was like, wow, I'm like that. That was a safe comfort zone that I didn't realize. I thought I was doing things that were a little bit more pushing me out, but they weren't. And then when I started acting, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope, and that was exhilarating. I'm like, I feel good again.
Making a movie, I feel like every time I make a film, there's always this like uncertainty. And of course, I try to do something new every time I make a film. Yeah. And so there's this like uncertainty of like, can we even pull this off? Mm-hmm. Right? That, I'm like, I'll literally, when we were shooting Clemency Boulevard, we're shooting a lot of stuff on like on the sidewalks and stuff like that. And I talked to the film office and they said, well, you don't need a permit to do that because it's because it's public property, it's city property, but you do need to notify everybody in the neighborhood that you're going to be filming. And so I'm like, this is how indie it gets, folks. The thing that you don't realize the fucking director is doing if he's self-producing his own films, I'm printing out a fucking thing that's notifying the days that we're going to shoot, and I'm rolling them up and I'm walking to every business and house in that neighborhood and handing them out saying, hey, on this day we're going to be doing this thing. Don't worry about it. We're shooting a movie. Just want to let you guys know that that's what we're going to be doing.
Right.
People don't know that people that are self-producing are doing that type of shit.
Yeah.
And you're just by yourself. And we're shooting for that movie. We're shooting in like shitty neighborhoods too.
Wow. Yeah.
Because it takes place in the hood. So that was kind of part of the story. But yeah, there's a lot of little things that you do, and you're kind of like, this is weird that I'm having to do this, but I have to do it.
Yeah, it is weird. Yeah, but it's one of those things where if you don't do it, the repercussions later are so much more.
And there very well might not be. We were shooting in so many public places. I was like, I'm covering.
Why take the risk?
I'm covering my ass. Like, it's not like I was having to freaking like pay anybody anything. We're shooting at the bus stop or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
that's cool because I think that's a level of humility. For me personally, I view that as a level of humility because I feel like an arrogant person with like some sort of negative vibe towards it would have been like, fuck everybody, we're going to do it anyway. And it's kind of like, well, that's not really that
There's
cool.
still an aspect of that, to be honest with you. There's still an aspect of like, yes, we are going to be inconveniencing people and we are going to be in their way.
Yeah, but I'm going to let you know, like, hey, be prepared.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to ruin your day.
Well, and I think the other thing about being a filmmaker, at least for me, when you're self-producing and self-funding everything, you don't have somebody co-signing on your movie, right? Yeah. And when you don't have that, there is I didn't realize how vulnerable I was going to be on this podcast, but I think this is the best way for people to get to know me in the area. I mean, if they have a problem with it, then I guess, so be it. But there's definitely that element of like, no one's co-signing on this, no one's funding my thing. I don't have all this stuff backing me. And so the only thing that I have is who I say I am.
Yeah.
And that's a little scary, right? Because you're going to just walk into someone's neighborhood and hand out a flyer and say, hey, we're shooting on February 13th, and just want to let you know we're going to be in the area, and don't worry about it. And you're going out there saying that you're this filmmaker, and you're going to do this thing. And there's that imposter syndrome thing. I never really felt like I struggled with that.
Yeah.
I think I more just struggle with the anxiety of, like, just doing the shit, like the logistical shit like that. Because I'd rather just, like... It's a lot easier to be like, I'm a director whenever you're showing everybody your movie.
Yeah.
When you're out there doing a thing, you don't know if anybody's going to take you seriously or whatever. You have no idea. And you have to do it anyway because you have to make the thing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. But there are these elements of producing that you're kind of like, this feels a little weird to do, and I'm going to do it, but it feels very strange.
Right. Yeah. Those are the things I really enjoy. Like I like the things that kind of feel uncomfortable, which is actually a great thing for.
I think it's good for me. I'm not saying it's not uncomfortable. I think it's good for me.
It
absolutely.
is good for sure. Like when we had our call, like after the first audition, when you had me do the second one, it was great because it was kind of challenging me to go for something like a certain type of approach that I've been working on lately to really lock in. And it was really great because I'm like, oh, good, a chance to practice this finally on a camera, not just by myself. It's like,
sure.
Or in a class or something. So, because it's something that my acting coach and I discuss a lot, and trying to lighten up some characters a little bit. Trying to find that lightness that's a tough thing sometimes when you come from a certain background that kind of forces you to keep that lightness in, and then you want
to be suspicious of it.
Yeah,
be suspicious of a good time.
Like the biggest thing is trying to let go of the idea of like if it's too good, like people saying too good to be true. I'm like, I scrap believing that. Like, no, fuck that. If it's good, it's good. Be proud of it and just go. Like run with it. Like stop trying to train your brain to like not enjoy things. And stop waiting for that other foot to drop.
I think there's that cynicism in social media is really like everybody's just like nobody knows how to laugh about anything without being cynical.
Yeah,
and it's like it's really fucking weird, or just self-deprecation humor. People talking shit on themselves.
Yeah, I've gotten really good at separating from that. And that's another reason why the last 3 years have been really important And it's really cool because it does feel like a lot of the stuff with acting and writing specifically, everything outside of music has felt like it's almost like I feel like I got detoured onto like the perfect road. It's really fun to where it's like I feel like I'm not driving it. I feel like I'm just kind of doing it. And it feels very comfortable, but not in a way where it feels like a safety blanket to where like I can't step out of it. It's like yeah, you know what, I will. You know, I was always terrified to do a play, but I might be doing my first play this year.
That's awesome.
You know, and that's awesome because that would have freaked me out last
theater
year.
Theater is totally, man, that shit's fucking wild, dude.
I know.
Holy
and it's one of those
shit,
things
man.
where, like, in my head, it
You
was
can't
like,
edit that shit. What you're doing, it's all there for everybody to see.
Yeah, and it's exciting because it's like, okay, well, I want to do things that freak me out a little bit, you know, because those are my favorite actors, are the guys who do the things that everyone else was afraid to do. You know, all those guys, like I have a huge list, but it's just one of those things where it's like I started to find I admired a lot more of that and directors and cinematographers almost more than I talked about bands and producers.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I didn't even notice it. My wife pointed it out. My family had pointed it out. They were like, that's like all he talks about. And he doesn't even realize it. You know?
That's funny. And
that changed the game for me in a minute. And then it kind of helped me clear my head where like my cynical sense of humor went out the window and self-sabotage went out the window.
Self-sabotage. Tell me more about that.
Just constantly like having that feeling of like you're not doing enough. You're not like you should be doing more. Or when you do something, you feel like, well, I didn't get this result. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not supposed to be here. And that stuff's so negative. Like it's just so bad to be talking to yourself.
I still struggle with that. I'm not going to say that I don't. Like,
yeah, and it's a hard thing to get rid of.
I hate doing the film festival stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just like I'm going to drop thousands of dollars into film fest submission fees in order for 70% of them to tell me no.
Wow.
You know, and maybe it gets into a handful, right? And I get that that's a numbers game that some people can get out of their own head and they can play.
Yeah.
You know, but for me, my mind, so I'll say this. The cathartic moments of creating something highly outweigh my desire to get any kind of viewership or accolades at a film festival. I need that cathartic release. I need that collaborative process. I need to be able to be with people on set and me and the actors and the crew. Like, I think the magic often happens with the actors. Of us crafting that moment. Yeah. And there's something really special about that when you capture it. It's just like, oh, what's fucking happening? Kind of and then everybody on set's feeling it. Yeah. And that's why they're all fucking quiet. Those moments are awesome. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And I love those moments because then when I yell cut, I'm able to champion that artist that delivered. That's so cool. And I'm I don't know if you know anything about personality types, but there's the Myers-Briggs and then the Kelsey test. They're both pretty much the same, but they have different names for shit. So there's there's like the ENFP. Yeah. Okay. Is the champion, which I am the champion, right? Awesome, so the Kelsey test calls it the champion, and I prefer the way that they talk about it. But the champion is somebody that wants to champion other people. Awesome. I want to see them succeed. Yeah. But the cool thing about making a movie is when an actor succeeds in their performance, not only do I get to champion them, which I love doing, but I'm benefiting from it because they're in my fucking movie. Yeah, that's so exciting. You got so exactly it is like an exclusively mutually beneficial moment. That's so cool. That's massive, right? Yeah. Because not only there's also a bit of a challenge for me as a director, and I have to kind of tell myself this sometimes, like no, I'm going with this person, and I don't know if I can get the performance out of them. We're close, but I'm gonna pull that performance out of them. Yeah, I'm gonna do everything in my power to craft that. Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, because even actors can't see what you need every time. They can't. They can't. And I have been. This is another telling a lot of things that people are gonna be like, "Fuck this guy! I don't want to work with this guy." Right? But there are definitely moments where it's crunch time. We're shooting the thing. We're not getting the moment. And a lot of directors frown upon this, but when you have no money and you're independent, I will use every resource I have in the fucking bag. Yeah. And sometimes I will say, do you mind if I perform it real quick and show you what's in my head? I see. Yeah. And a lot of directors and actors hate that, and I know that they do, because it can be like, fuck them up and be like, oh, I was way off base or whatever. It can get in their head. I'm not trying to do that. I really hope that all of the moments leading up to that, where I'm spending a lot of time trying to make them feel safe, and that I do appreciate them as an artist, that it doesn't disrupt that process. But sometimes we get we don't have the time.
Yeah.
And we're communicating and trying and doing take after take, and we're not getting there.
Yeah, that could be really tough.
And I know that a lot of actors don't necessarily appreciate it, but it is one of those things where I'm just kind of like, the sun's literally on the horizon going down, and we have to get this shot.
Yeah, because you're in a literal race against time.
Yeah, do you mind if I just show you what's in my head? Not saying that they have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Right? But I need them to know the vibe of, like, if a character's panicking, or if I've had actors where I'm just kind of like, I need you to be breathing heavier, right?
Right.
You just got shot in the chest and you have no oxygen.
Yeah.
Right. So you're hyperventilating, right?
Yeah. You got to think about how that feels.
And I'll be doing that shit while I'm talking to him, right?
Yeah.
But so I don't know. Maybe that makes me, less of a director. But I think when you're self-producing and stuff like that, and you want that person to succeed, and I've had other directors be like, I would never do that. It's so rude to the actor. I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna say I'm the best fucking director out there, because I'm not.
I think it depends. I think it also depends on the actor. Like, if you can have that humility to recognize that you're struggling to get to a certain thing. I think once insecurity and fear kicks in, that's probably tougher.
Yeah.
But if an actor can go in and, like, they feel good about what they're doing, but they're just like, if you can admit it, like, something's not right. And
maybe the more that I learn to direct, the more that I realize that I need to absolutely abstain from that. But at this point in my career, I haven't. But it's not like it's something that I do every time.
Yeah,
I only do it if we're really off base. If we're really, really off base and we're running out of time.
Well, did you hear? I don't know how much you looked into it, but did you happen to look into any of the stuff with Todd Phillips and Joaquin Phoenix with that Joker movie they did together?
I didn't look. No behind the scenes stuff. No.
So it's really interesting. For the first, I think Joaquin Phoenix might have said it was the first 3 weeks of filming. They went in and were doing I think they said they did all of Joker stuff first. I could be wrong about this. It was either all of Joker stuff or all of the Arthur character first. And either way, he wasn't happy with the approach at all after 3 weeks. And
Todd wasn't?
Both of them.
They didn't dig it.
They both talked and were like, this isn't right. We were so off. And they did exactly what you just said. They worked together, and Todd Phillips worked very closely with him to make sure that they got it. And then, that next Monday morning, they had to go to wardrobe. They had to go to all these people and be like, hey, I'm really sorry, but we got it all wrong the last 3 weeks. And they started the whole thing again.
I did not know that. That's wild.
Yeah,
Holy
so
shit.
it's definitely something that just, it's all and I think it varies. I think every film's different, right? That's what makes it exciting. Like,
yeah.
I'm one of those people, like, if something gets really stagnant, and I feel like it's really not, the ball's really just not rolling anymore, I get bored and I have to walk. Like, I can't. So, like, for me, it's great. As I love it because every project is different. Every director is different. Every other actor is different that you get to work with. It's where you just pick things and learn from each other. I think if you can go into things as a student, even if you're already a master, if you can still go in as a student, I think you can have nothing but good results.
Definitely. I think also, acknowledging, I'll say this, there are a couple different things that we have to acknowledge. One is we're in the indie world, which means that we haven't made it yet, which means we're not fucking masters of our craft. And just own that and be okay with it, right? Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, then maybe we have to utilize every resource that we've got. Like, I've definitely sent people material of performances from other films and said, this is kind of the vibe that I'm looking for.
Right.
Right? Because it's a crucial moment, and if we don't get it, the movie doesn't work. And I think offending someone is something I'm less concerned about than I am about getting the moment right. And I know that sounds like, I don't care if I fucking offend somebody. We gotta fucking do it. It sounds like such a douchey thing to say, but I think at least I want my actors to trust me that, look, if we get this moment, you won't be bothered by the fact that it took us this trajectory to get there.
Yeah.
Right. I would say it was Clemency Boulevard, which with the final moment. I'm talking about this movie that's not even out on YouTube yet. So, but that last moment, we reshot the whole fucking thing.
Right.
And I gave him some material of like, this is kind of the vibe I'm looking for.
Right.
Right. And he was new. He had never been in anything before. Right. He'd been in acting
good.
classes and stuff.
Yeah.
Never been anything before. It was my 5th film. Mm-hmm. Right. But I'm still not going to say that I'm the best fucking director. And so I'm okay with like, we got to try this. There's some material to look at. This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And if we get that moment and you're in the theater and you're that actor and you got that fucking moment, I am going to sound like a douche, but I'm going to be like, are you really that mad at me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
when
the whole
result is
fucking
what you
theater
wanted.
is gasping right now at your performance.
Yeah. I think that's a big thing is like you just got to think about the process. I mean, there's been so many people in so many great roles that took them forever to get there. That's fine. That's a fine thing. Like it's like yeah, it sucks when it does cost money, but it's not like when you're in the independent world. That's why so many of my favorite actors are the guys who can go off and do the big franchises and come back and do a small indie feature or even a short, and it's brilliant. Yeah. And I love watching them not have that fear to go down, like in terms of like do a smaller project for less money to do something great with a new director that could teach them something amazing, you know? Because I feel like it's like it's like acting definitely, and I think writing, everything that's film related, I'll say, I think always reflects where the person or the people involved are in their life at that point. Because that's the only way you can really do it. Like you can't play certain roles if you're not there.
Well, I've
been there at least once.
I'll throw this out there. So I'm not particularly good at writing villains because I don't necessarily behave like one.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to have like kind of gone, at least I think, if you're going to write something terrifying, like you're going to be a bully, for example. Like you got to have bullied some people to know how to do that.
Or have just sat and people watched, or you have been bullied so much that you
I mean, I've been bullied plenty, but I don't know how to switch that on necessarily. I do know how to hold my own and be like, this is where I'm at, what I believe, whatever. Be staunch in my beliefs, but but that's just a response to being treated like shit or whatever. You know what I mean? But what I'm saying is that I actually went to an actors corner thing at Abbey Ray Studios last weekend, and I actually acted Shoegazer myself.
Awesome, cool.
And got a great response from it. They were all like really into it. I'd never acted before. Like I've done little bit things in my movies, but I'd never really acted.
Got ya.
So and I was like, well, I want to try this just to try it on. They'd all done their performances and they were really cool about it. And I was like, all right, cool. So I did that, and they were like, after I was done, they're like, holy shit, that was awesome. And I was like, oh, and they're like, it was good. And they're like, dude, you've got the chops. You could act if you want to. But and I played it off a little bit. I played it down because I was like, look, I wrote the script. I've been listening to people read the script for the past couple weeks. Like I know the script much better than any of you guys know the stuff that you read tonight. You know what I mean? Just because it is something that I wrote. Yeah, it's different. So I kind of played it down a little bit, but I did say something when I was there that just kind of came out of my mouth that I think I was surprised that I said it in retrospect, but I think I do believe it, and that is better actors are, like at least my experience, the actors that are better are the ones that are most self-aware.
Yeah.
Right? So like if you know, like they were talking about like when someone is crying or whatever, right? When they're sad, and it's like, oh, I'm sad, and they just start crying. It's like, that's not actually how it works, right? Your emotions try to take control of who you are, and you don't want that to happen because that's shameful. And so you're going to rein that back, right? And we talked about that, and I got choked up when I did the shoegazer part. I had a moment where I started to kind of cry, and then I reined it back. And then another actor utilized that later on in his performance. But I was like, look, there's a shame and a vulnerability in crying. And so it might start to crop up, and you're gonna push it back down. That's a normal thing for a person to do. The only reason, at least in my experience, that somebody actually legitimately cries is if they've exhausted all of their resources to deal with this thing, and they are literally at a loss.
Yeah.
Or they're being manipulative. I don't, you know what I mean? Like you're either legitimately broken,
Yeah, and you can
or
feel
you're
that.
utilizing it to get something.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're just like somebody who's like just got a speeding ticket, right, and you're falling apart, and you're like, I'm sad, and bro, like,
Yeah.
if you break down getting a speeding ticket, everyone's going to think, what else is really going on?
Yeah, there's something else happening.
People are going to think that there's something underneath all of that.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing with acting is I've learned is clarity. Be very clear with your intention when you're acting. Like, I'm not saying think about it, overthink it, and everybody has a different way of approaching. But for me, it's like eliminating every little bit of just anything that could be vague. Anything that somebody may like be like, why are they crying right now? Why is he so angry right now? That's not that angry of a situation.
Unless you're trying to evoke that. If you're trying to get them to wonder why.
Yeah, and it just has to like really make sense and work for the scene and work with the other actor, because you do see that where like there's a lot of nerves that kick in, and I was guilty of this when I first started too. Was there was a lot of nerves, and my characters didn't portray power. If it was a powerful character,
they didn't, or they did.
They didn't, because like it was almost like the nerves were in my head, and I was thinking about how I was walking. I was thinking about how I delivered a line.
Yeah.
And those have been the best moments, though, because that was a great opportunity to learn for a director to go, hey, let's loosen it up a little bit. You don't have to be so uptight when you're doing that movement, or maybe let's be a little more uptight. Maybe it was always varied.
Sure.
And I was like, oh, I see. Like, I'm like, man, there's so many minor details that make such a big difference.
But
it was
the more
so great to find that.
The more contact you have with like your own demons and your own personality and your own self-awareness, the more you're able to utilize those sensibilities in your performance.
For sure, yeah. And then you can learn how to kind of learn how to find them. I think a little easier, and that's something that's been great for me with the classes that I take. I love it. I love studying and reading about it and putting it to use physically and everything, to be able to sit there and go, okay, am I delivering this the way that feels real? Does this feel true?
Sure.
To that character that was given to me, you know.
Have you ever thought about? I'll throw this out there. Have you ever thought about saying, well, these are my strengths as far as what types of characters I am good at, so I'm going to lean into that and audition for those roles? Or do you specifically just like, I mean, I guess if you're an indie actor, you're casting a wide net anyway because you're just trying to get whatever roles you can get. But I wonder, like, do you have like moments where you're like, this is my strength, so I'm going to lean into that and audition for this type of stuff?
That for sure. I'm definitely very picky about it.
That's good. Yeah. I like that. I think that's good because, like, as a writer-director, I don't write comedy.
Yeah.
It's not my strength.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm too serious of a fucking person to write that shit. Right. Like I am a serious. I love laughing and having a good time personally with other people, but I am very much a serious person in my own head.
Yeah, it's different when you're writing.
You know,
and very different.
Like, and the only like, I mean, I'll occasionally have comedic moments in a movie, but I don't lean into it because it's not my strength.
Right.
But I do have this like, but there's these things that are definitely you. And you should own those things and lean into them with the kind of stuff that you're writing.
That's definitely where I go. Like I know where my strengths are right now, so that's what I lean into first. And then I try little things like lightening it up a little bit. That's something I've been working on a lot recently with acting, is like lighter characters that I can do where it's like maybe it's just a very happy-go-lucky type of person, or someone who's feeling this genuine sense of bliss at all times. And I've more so recently discovered what that actually feels like, to know how to get to it. But it's the delivery, and it is the part, and it's the story. It's everything that's all encompassing.
Yeah.
But I do tend to get cast as like a lot of like sad characters, villains. I get sad. I get villains.
You have an angular villainous look. I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it, right?
Yeah, and I'm not mad about it. I love it. It's fun.
Dude, the villains are the most interesting characters.
They're
Are you
so
kidding me?
fun. Yeah.
Oh my God. So fun.
And it's cool. I'll get that, or I'll get like the really off the wall, like weird, like it'll be like a photographer or something at an art gallery, but he's got some weird twisted motive. But he's not necessarily saying if it's like they're never very clear, of course, when you get an audition. It's just sides. You get the story, but you don't really know what this is really getting at.
Sure.
So you're just trying your best to find it, which is exciting as hell. But it is funny, yeah. It's like I tend to notice it, and I go out for it too. Like when I'm really seeking an audition, I'll go for that because I'm like, oh, you know what? I'd feel pretty comfortable doing that, but it also doesn't feel like something I've done a million times. You know, like give me a
like
cool
I'm not
story.
talking about typecasting. I'm talking about look, like Melissa McCarthy isn't going to audition for the freaking hot lead in a movie because that's not who she is. She knows who she is, and she leans into that. Zach Galifianakis is the same way.
Great.
Jack Nicholson,
Yeah,
he leans into like always a little bit of a crazy character.
So he's a little angry.
Yeah. Like, but they know their strengths, and they're
Yes.
like, "This is my bread and butter. I'm going for that." And that self-awareness, I think, keeps their freaking careers relevant.
I think so too, and their ability to almost write themselves as well. You know, because there's so many things where it's like you don't have to use all this, but let me give you everything I've got. If I have every idea, there's this one great story about Matt. I found a video of Matt Damon talking about being on the set of The Departed, and he's talking about that scene on the beach where Jack Nicholson shoots the couple in the back of the head, and he wrote that he wrote and not like rewrote it, but added to the scene on the spot, just because he just had these ideas of ways to make his character a little more sinister, and then Martin Scorsese had all the room in the world to play with that. And he could have kept it or left it, you know? And it was like probably 6 or 7 different times Jack Nicholson was like, but if you leave the camera rolling, you know, with that typical voice, you could go this way. And it's like, it's so great because they're like, oh my God, this dude's full of ideas. Let's just try it. Keep the cameras on. Let's try it.
I don't know, like, if you're shooting digitally, I don't know what the fucking harm is if you already got what you need.
Yeah, just have some fun.
Dude, like my friend Jonathan Regier, he's an actor in LA. I went to college with him, but he's been a working actor out there for a while. He was an extra on Lincoln. And he said something to me. He only knows the LA thing. This is as far as I know. Jonathan, if you're watching this, forgive me if I'm assuming things about you, right? But he's a working actor there, so he only knows those types of sets and stuff, right? But he was telling me like that there's a scene with Tommy Lee Jones, and they got the scene, and Spielberg says, "All right, we got what we need. Give me one for you."
Cool. That's so cool.
And Jonathan was like, "That's amazing. I would love to be on a set like that." I'm like, "But I do that."
That's awesome. That's great.
I'm like, "We got what we needed." I'm like, "Do you want to give me another? Just fuck with it."
Oh, it's so cool.
Right? And and I don't know. I don't mind if we have the time. It's literally data on a card.
Right.
It's not, you know what I mean? If we've got the time to do it, we've got the time to fucking do
try
it.
it,
But
have some fun.
But when, we shot this, final scene with Damien and Clemency Boulevard, like it was, me, operating camera, an AC operating focus, and then my friend Devin is there to help us out and with just being around, and we're just going over it over and over again. And Devin was like, "Man, you are just working the shit out of this scene with this guy." And I was like, "I don't feel like we're getting it." He's like, "No, this is amazing stuff."
Great. That's awesome.
Right. And then the funny thing is like, I still trust my own sensibilities because we still hadn't gotten it, and we did get it.
Right.
Right. But what he was talking about, he thought it was amazing, but it still wasn't there. It wasn't what I was talking about. What I was trying to get. But
you ended up with a variety.
But that's honestly owning the cinema camera and all the gear and stuff like that. Like, as a director, and learning cinematography, that's been the freedom that has allowed me. Is we didn't get the scene, we're just going to go redo it. I got a camera, I got another homie, and we're just going to do the thing. And
so that's what I imagine.
Having the freedom to just, and that when we reshot it, it was very simple.
Yeah.
But we got it.
Great. Yeah.
And it's people watch that scene, they can't tell that it was shot on 2 different days.
That's so cool.
But allowing yourself the freedom to do that without, we didn't rent the camera, and now we're using different lenses, so it doesn't look the same, and you don't have any of those problems anymore. And I like the freedom that allows.
Those types of things, I imagine, since I've never actually had the opportunity to ride a motorcycle myself, but it's the thing that I'm most interested in about it is the freedom of it. Like, and that really that cool. Walking that tightrope of riding on something that's clearly like, it's not like the safety of a car, but it feels like that on set where it's like, it's not the safety of a guideline and knowing that this is my monologue or this is my line and this is how my other actor's delivering it to where I have to respond accordingly. It's so cool to be like, hey, do you want to just fuck with that real quick? That's like, ooh, like this already felt great. And if it feels good, and like for me personally, if I just felt like we got it and I was proud, I would just be like, no, you know what, I'm really happy with what we did. I don't want to touch it. But if there's a moment where it's like, you know what, I think I could try something. Let's see what we can add to this. And if it gets in, it gets in. If not, then like we're just all getting better together right now by trying this. That's like ultimate freedom.
I think you're as a writer, producer, director, you're spending all this time building up to this one day. Mm-hmm. If you have the time to fuck around with something, there's something to be said for making your day if you got a lot of shit going on. Because usually when you're an indie filmmaker or just any filmmaker in general, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. We got fucking 5 different locations we got to do today. We got to knock this shit out. But if you got the time, that I feel like that's where you're getting the most out of each other, because you are on a wire. It's this like. Today's the fucking day, right? So if we're gonna capture it, we're gonna capture it.
Yeah, I hope you've done your homework.
Yeah. And there's an adrenaline to all of that.
There is, yeah. It's always exciting. Even when I know I feel good walking on set, there's still that tiny voice that's kind of like, "Are you sure?" I
never sleep the night before a shoot. Like,
yeah.
If we're doing like consecutive days, then I do, because I'm so exhausted after the first day. I have no choice but to sleep.
Sure, yeah.
But the first day, I rarely do.
That's how I used to be with shows. I remember I would wake up like as if like I was a little kid on Christmas, like just shooting out of bed at like 7 a.m. and like getting ready to go play that show for 30 minutes. You know, I had that 30 minutes.
I'll sleep until noon if I ain't got shit going on that day. But if it's a
shoot, I'm up. I'm reading that script again. I'm preparing. Man. I'm finding my voice. I'm finding my walk again. Really being like, okay, make sure you're feeling good when you walk out of this house, because then when you get into that car, you're that person. You're that character. When you walk on set, you are that character. Let's deliver this so we don't lose it. Because it's like, if you can get it, there's only a few, I think. There's even Al Pacino says it himself. He's like, I find a sensation. He goes, and it doesn't last me very long, only a few moments. He's like, and then I resort to just being in the moment. And I'm like, well, that is a beautiful option. I actually have something to double down on that with.
When we're shooting, there's something that, so I'm an anxiety-ridden person. For those who don't know. Right? It's one of the reasons why I'm an artist. But
it definitely helps.
It's just
helps tame the beast.
It's like the other side of it's the dark side of the moon on that one. But I when I'm on set, I don't experience. My brain doesn't operate the same way, and I think that's why it keeps me coming back. Like, I remember when I was in high school, we had a jewelry smithing, like silversmithing class, jewelry making type thing. So we learned how to solder silver and embezzle stones and all that type of stuff.
Awesome.
It was really, really cool. And Mr. Kaufman, who was, Mr. Crawford, who was our teacher, when people would tell him that something was going wrong, his response was always, cool. Right? He'd always respond that way. And I always thought it was fucking funny as hell. I was like, Mr. Crawford, the buffing wheels aren't working anymore. And he's like, cool.
That's awesome.
He's in the middle of something. He's not going to do anything about it right now. He'll get to it, right? But he's not doing anything about it right now. When I'm on set and something goes wrong, I go, neat.
Awesome. That's great. Like, I think awesome is mine.
I'm not miffed by it at all, which in every other aspect of my life, I will be miffed by whatever the fuck is going wrong.
I feel that way, yeah.
But when I'm on set and someone's like just, I don't know, making me aware of something that's going haywire, I'll just be like, neat. Like, I just say that, and then it becomes by the end of the day, it always becomes a running joke.
Yeah.
By the end of the day, like, that's so neat. Like, if it sucks, like, people say it's neat.
Mine's always awesome.
Awesome.
I go, awesome.
Yeah. If it's just terrible,
awesome.
You're like, awesome. Dude.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Yeah. Like, today's been like the day I should just never have left the house. Like, it's just traffic everywhere and like every red light. My GPS, I have the Waze app and the GPS that's on the phone. I forget what it is. Like, was it Google Maps?
Google Maps, yeah.
Both of them have just been redirecting me in the middle of my drive and making me take longer to get where I need to go. So both of them, I was like, well, fuck Waze right now. I'm going to use Google Maps because Waze isn't working.
Yeah.
So I go to Google Maps and it did it to me today on my way here. It just
turns out it's a satellite problem. It's not even the fucking app.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing I can do about it. But it's so funny because it's like you'll feel that little bit of anxiety of like, I just want to get where I'm supposed to be right now. Like, and I'm one of those people where like if I'm not 10 minutes early, I'm late. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
just
yeah.
how I am. Like
I love that.
I like
I
to
love
be
that.
early. I like to be early because you get a sense of the set. You get a sense of the people that you're going to be working with all day.
Yeah.
And that's just how I am with things. And if I can be there early, I will be. And it's just a funny thing to be in that situation. But then, yeah, when something is going a little haywire on set, I'm kind of like, awesome. Yeah, we'll get it.
Yeah, well,
We'll
I mean,
figure it out. I'm totally fine.
It's one of those
so
things
weird.
when you're on set, because you have so much shit to do and like so many pieces so many moving pieces. And if you're an independent filmmaker, you're managing more of those pieces than a regular filmmaker would be.
Sure.
You know, you literally do not have time to worry about it.
Right. Yeah.
It does not help you at all.
Yeah. It doesn't help to let it take over.
And there's something about being on set that my propensity to do that in every other aspect of my life is washed away.
Right. Right.
And I think maybe one of the reasons why I love it so much is because of that. Because I'm just like, this is a moment where I feel like a normal person again. Where I'm not.
That's what I
where
love
I'm
too.
Not, yeah, where I'm not fazed by the normal rinky-dink shit that would piss me off.
Yeah, it keeps you focused. It's like because you have to be focused, and the concentration is everything. Like it's like I definitely realize that the harder time I've had with whether it be other actors or other directors in the room, which has been super rare. I've been really lucky. I've worked with all really awesome people. All people who are very serious about having this be their life. So
That's
it's
great.
whereas like in the past with like music stuff, not everyone was on that same page.
No, it might just be just a fun thing that they do.
Which is
yeah.
great.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, cool. I'm actually envious that you can just do that just for the fun of it because I wanted to do it for the rest of my life.
Yeah, have you always been like that? Where you just like, I want this to be a career? Like you just always
Yeah, I
going
don't
for
do
that?
anything I have no hobbies. I really don't. And it's like
I'm the
one
same
thing
way.
that I'm like,
I'm always trying to make it a career. Building motorcycles, I was trying to do the same thing. It didn't, you know.
Yeah.
I'm glad it wasn't that because it really didn't bring me the kind of joy that filmmaking or making music does.
Exactly, and that's what I've always kind of followed. But what's funny is I always knew it was going to be one of these two things. I've never thought it was going to be like anything else.
Yeah.
So I was always just like, it's going to be one or the other, but I got to really try this one.
Sure.
Because I'm already doing it. Let me really try this. And then it was like, well, I'm going to jump in the deep end right now and try this other thing because I believe that I can. And I can learn every day. Like in my acting classes, my phone is in the other side of the room. When I'm talking to you, I'm not acknowledging it. There's no distractions. There's none of that.
It's true.
When I'm on set, it's not. It's probably in my car or something. Like it's so far away from me to where any outside distraction or conversation, it doesn't even happen. It forces me to focus and not
It really
worry.
does give you tunnel vision when the stakes are that high.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's great to kind of disconnect for a little bit and just do your job and enjoy it. And there's really nothing else that makes me do that. When I'm in the studio, I am on my phone.
Yeah. Oh, when you're making music.
I do find myself drifting, and I'm like, maybe partially that could be due to the fact that I've been doing it for so long.
Sometimes the track sucks. Sometimes what you're writing fucking sucks, and you're like, I'm gonna distract myself from
Yeah, or just like maybe sometimes you're just not as invested as you thought you were gonna be. But then there have been times where, like when Black Mansions began, Spags would send me a piece of music or show me in the studio in the moment, and I'd have lyrics, verses, melodies, and a chorus already.
Oh,
like
wow.
immediate. I'd be like, we have to record this now. I can't leave now. I would literally be on my way out the door, and he'd be like, wait, let me show you this thing that I made.
And now you're recording.
Now I'm like, oh, now I'm here till 2 a.m. you
Yeah.
know?
That's
And
beautiful.
Yeah, I can't help it. You know,
fucking great.
but those moments don't always happen. But when I notice it is always like that is when I'm on set and I'm acting. Always.
So you're always like in full immersion when you're acting.
Yeah, and it's not like I guess like some people I think have a really weird misconception of the idea of method acting because it's not like that but it's a matter of just like I'm just so focused
all the
on
other
what's
bullshit
happening.
don't matter, dude. It doesn't matter.
Like people are like, we got to check the lights. Like if you want to go grab some food real quick, this is going to take a few minutes. And I'm like, well, the light has to be on me right now. I'll sit here until you get it. If somebody wants to like be kind enough to bring me something from whatever, I'm like, fine. But at the same time, but if I can sit here and make this better for you, this is actually better for me too. Because you're so focused on getting that light right, and you're so focused on getting that angle right, and I'm so focused on just having the lines in my head and keeping that feeling so that when it happens, you feel it, and then the cinematographer feels it, and then hopefully the audience feels it. And then I can feel like I don't even have to watch it and watch myself and judge myself for the next 3 weeks. I could just be like, cool, I feel like I did my part, and we're all happy.
Wow.
So it's a cool thing that it locks in so much because nothing else gets my attention like that. It's crazy.
And we were talking earlier about how there's so many distractions right now. So the vitality of that is like exponentially increased.
Yeah. It's a lot easier, I think, when we're all in the same place and we're all focused on the same goal.
There's something special about that. I'll say this one last thing because we're talking about not having time to be worrying about other shit.
Right.
When I'm making a film, things that would normally piss me off or make me like offended, I don't have time to be offended by them.
Yeah. I'm just going to write about them later and it's another film.
No, I mean, what I mean is like...
it's great.
And this is not about anybody in particular. It's just something that happens when somebody on the crew or cast or whatever who is vital to what's happening.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not talking about someone who's making my life difficult. Let's just say they're not the best communicator or something.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'd like a little bit more of a response in the email or the text or like, and you're not really, or maybe they don't respond for a day or whatever. Like, but they're really fucking good at the role.
Yeah.
Normally, if it was a friend, I'd be like, fuck this dude, man. Fucking ignore my text, bitch. Like, no.
This is important.
Right, what the fuck, right?
Yeah.
Because I get offended because that's about me personally and, like, my value to them, right?
Right.
But with a movie, it's like,
awesome way to say it.
No, this isn't about me, and it says nothing about me, right? If they're not responding in the way that I would normally respond to something like that, right? It's like, no, the movie needs to get made. The story needs to get told. And if they communicate differently or maybe it's not in the way that like, okay, well, I'm not going to be fucking best friends with them. But they're amazing for the role.
Yeah.
And I need them to make this fucking movie. Mm-hmm. Right? And so some things that normally would get under my skin don't.
Yeah.
Because the goal is so much larger.
Yeah.
I really would like that to be a transferable skill into the rest of my life.
That would be awesome.
Where shit didn't miff me like that.
Yeah. Hey,
like
man, I don't know if you're already into it or not, but like meditation and just finding quiet time when I wake up to just be by myself has done that for me.
I do. It's been a variety of different approaches. I do pray a bunch. Mm-hmm. I've also been like, I do yoga because what it does for my people at the yoga studio, I just think I'm fucking weird too, because like after an hour of like yoga, my brain's like there's nothing in it.
I know,
and
I
love that freedom.
Me too. Yeah.
And so yoga will be done, and everyone's like, "Oh, roll up my mat and go do the thing. I gotta have dinner with Bobby and do." And I'm like on the ground. I'm like, this is the most free I've felt.
I know.
In 6 days, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then also.
Feels like time moves slower.
It's weird to not not have those anxieties in the front of my brain.
Yeah.
Because they do kind of like I have generalized anxiety disorder, so I kind of the anxiety is not always behind the wheel, but he's in the car.
Yeah, and sometimes just being in the car is enough. Yeah,
it's enough to piss you off.
Yeah.
It's enough to irritate you. So I did that, and then also I have gotten into Ram Dass. You know who Ram Dass is? So what was his real name? He was a Harvard professor that did all the LSD tests in the 60s.
Okay. I know what you're talking about.
And Richard Alpert was his name.
Oh, okay.
And he was Harvard professor, did all of the LSD tests, and part of his funding was dependent on him he wasn't allowed to use any Harvard students for the testing.
Okay.
He did it. And he was a hardcore atheist, gay guy, published author, successful, owned his own freaking plane and shit, like really successful guy. Right, and he was not only did he run all this tests, but he did a lot of LSD himself, and he was hardcore atheist, and LSD caused him to have religious moments that were just like boom, like huge for him. Right. Well, a Harvard student lies about not being a Harvard student to get access to LSD, and he gets fucking fired, loses all his funding. Oof. Right, but he'd already had these religious moments while on LSD, so he was like, "Fuck it," and he just moved to India.
Wow. Okay.
And he met this guy. Named Maharishi Matis Yogi, who was his guru, and studied under that guy for like 2-3 years. And Ram Dass was kind of the main dude in the 70s, like 60s, 70s hippie movement. The main dude that brought a lot of that. over.
Okay.
So he came back and had this like. So amongst all the psychedelic culture and the hippie culture, also it became tethered to a lot of this Eastern religion stuff. He was kind of a champion of a lot of that, brought a lot of that over.
Got it.
And he's been a teacher, religious teacher, kind of more of a guru in his own way for his entire life since then. And there is who was it? There's it's East Forest and then another electronic artist. What they did was they took all the best parts from his guided meditations and teachings, and they put music over them for an entire fucking album.
Awesome.
And I listened. There was like probably about a year ago. I was listening to that a lot just to chill me out.
That sounds like I feel because I was just recently listening to something about that, but it wasn't as in depth. So now I'm recognizing the story a tiny bit more, but they didn't go as in depth as you just did. But I've actually found that same help, like with like because they'll do it with like theta waves, which is great for us people who
theta
love
waves. What is theta waves?
Yeah, so it's just frequencies. It's like frequencies, but they'll record very specifically, similar to how we do.
No
it's
shit.
all synthesis. Yeah, I'll send you it. It's awesome.
Oh, okay.
And it's just great to fall asleep to. Sometimes I'll do it while I'm driving, and it's just great for like, if you're like more mantra based meditation, which is a lot better for driving because you're operating more subconsciously than you think anyway when you drive. So it's really great because the subconscious mind is so much more powerful.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
is why reprogramming the brain to be more positive with self-talk and things like that has helped me so much because it used to not be like that at all. And it just, I see photos of myself and from like the past, I'm like, who is that guy?
It's
pretty wild, but it's helped a lot. Just listening to those things.
I'm going to say this one thing, and then I'm going to say another thing. A little pair here, but we're still jamming. It's been 3 hours, but we're still kicking it. This is great. He has a line in one of his things. I'm going to send it to you as well, where he says, "It hits me every time I hear it." He says, "Everything that you don't need, you can let go of." And it sounds like a fucking basic fucking thing. Right, it sounds so simple, man. But when he says it, you don't realize how much stuff you're carrying with you that you don't need.
That's why that quiet time alone to just do that is so important because you'll find it.
What really helped me get a reset this week is I went to Red Rock Canyon, blew my fucking mind.
I saw your posts of that. That was beautiful.
Man, the anxiety being in my life, and I take something to sleep, but I really try to stay away from pharmaceuticals as much as I can.
Same. Yeah, I avoid that at all costs.
And I tried here and there, and it actually made it worse. So I was like, I'm not being a guinea pig.
That's why
Fuck all of this shit. Fuck all of this shit. Right. But climbing up a fucking mountain, the physical exhilaration, the only thing that you can think of is the rocks that you're climbing on because you could fucking fall.
Yeah, you better be focused.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you're in a situation where only you can think about is the fucking rocks that you're walking on, it clears everything out.
It does.
Right? And not only does it do that, but it also gets a massive freaking serotonin boost or dopamine boost from the physical exhilaration of it. And so I came down from the mountain. It's not surprising that like these religious figures like Moses come down from the mountain with a religious experience. Like, well, you climbed up the mountain, so there's this.
You're looking for something, yeah.
There's this like all of these physical elements to what's happening that's clearing your head.
Yeah.
Right.
You're exerting all
and then you're coming
stuff
down from it and you're feeling like a new person. I'm not surprised that that's a common theme in mythology.
No, makes total sense.
Yeah.
Like a long walk in the wilderness or something. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And physical exhilaration causes you to block a lot of other stuff out. And I came back down and I was like, I sat down on the gravel and I ate my sandwich. And after I finished eating, I realized how fucking quiet it was.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about the quietness of the space, the quietness of my head too, because I wouldn't have noticed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like, oh, wow. This was like, it was really special.
Yeah, I needed this.
Oh, man. And it was just such a massive reset for me. I was like, and then I look at the pictures and stuff like that, and I'm like, this is a special moment for me. So I'm gonna, I bought a fucking year pass for that thing, so I can keep going back out there because it's good for. I need the exercise for one, but it's really good for my head.
Yeah, it's so good for everything. It gets you so like just aligned with everything you need to be doing, and then creatively you can act on all cylinders. You know, you can allow that stuff
absolutely.
to fire off because there's nothing in the way.
Yeah,
because usually there is. So it's great to find those things that get you out of the way. Because for me, for a little while to get that stuff to quiet down, it was drinking, but it was never like to a point of like alcoholism or anything like that. I never felt dependent on it. But I felt a sense of like if I'd be out playing and someone had bought me a drink or something, I wouldn't say no ever. Even though I knew it was like
a principle that I have. I don't say no to free booze.
yeah, dude. Well, I quit like 2 years ago or something.
So you don't drink at all now?
No, and I stopped because I had like a crazy. Like a total like mental breakdown one night.
Wow.
And it was just, it sucked.
Any substances at all? Do you smoke weed? Do you need
I have edibles. I'll have an edible at night, and that
okay.
helps me sleep. That kind of clears things up. So yeah, I don't ever claim.
But it's not a
like,
recreational thing necessarily?
No, I don't like go out of my way to like smoke or anything like that with like anybody. I don't really ever leave my house otherwise. I'm always either home writing, or if I'm out, I'm working. Like I'm always doing something. So I've always got something positive going on, which is good. So that's why when I realized, like, I was like, oh, like alcohol is kind of the only thing that I'm not like reaping any real benefits from. So I was like, well, it's like you said, everything I don't need, I can get rid of. So I shedded that. And then it took me a while to start slowly but surely shedding my obsession with making music my life, because I realized it's always going to be there. It's a part of who I am.
Sure, you're going to do it regardless because it's impulsive.
Yeah, and I'm sure when Spag sends me another great piece of music, I'll be writing immediately, you know, but in the moment...
But you guys only do it when there's something there.
That's it, yeah, because we don't care about getting signed. Like, I've been signed twice. One time to a label with a lot of money but no resources, but it was one of the best times of my life. And then I had been signed to a label with... very limited resources and no money at all. So we were just on the same boat together. So I was kind of like, okay, well, as I did more research, it seemed to be the common
I'm curious,
thing.
What labels were those?
I could go on.
What? I'm just
today.
curious because I got signed to a label too, but it wasn't a big one, so that's why.
Yeah, this was like, and it was. I was happy with the opportunity to collaborate again and try something. And when I realized that it just wasn't happening and I was doing things on my own better, I stuck with that route. But that route was exhausting and it burnt me out so bad to where finally I severed the ties in 2021, and it felt like the same way as it did when I stopped drinking alcohol. I was like, wow, I feel light. I feel clear. I can think. I don't feel like there's this chatter going on in my brain anymore. And I was like, you know, as great as, and I used to be afraid of stopping that because if I stop that, I can't create. And that's really like...
I actually struggle with that same belief. That's interesting that you say that.
Yeah,
I have a strong belief that kind of suffering is kind of part of the process. And I've had other people tell me that they don't believe that, they don't agree with that. And I'm not entirely sure why I believe that, but it's just kind of there. I don't know. I don't know.
I agree. I do agree. Like, I do think it helps. I do think there's a point where it does help, but I also don't. One thing I disagree with is feeding it. Because like suffering's gonna happen anyway. Yeah, like why do we need to make it worse?
It's the same philosophy I have with being on film set. Like we're already gonna have shit go wrong.
Yeah,
I don't need it going more wrong.
It's all the same stuff. Like happiness is gonna happen if you choose it. Suffering's gonna happen if you choose to give it your attention. Like the wolf you feed is gonna be the strongest one, right? So it's like
it's interesting. I know. I like that.
Yeah, it's like let's decide which one is actually gonna serve us here. But that's a lot of why, like, even when I started studying, really going to acting classes and studying acting, I found a real connection to, like, the Michael Chekhov technique, because it's a lot more based in imagination. And I can pull from that stuff a little bit more. Whereas I wanted to get into Stanislavski and Meisner. And Meisner I still use parts of, and I still use a little bit of Stanislavski, because that and Chekhov are very closely related. But with the Stanislavski stuff, it was a lot more of pulling from personal trauma and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't want to revisit all that. Like, I wrote about it. I felt the catharsis writing about it. And now with this new thing,
I get a lot of validation from writing it into the script.
Yeah.
When I first started writing scripts, I wrote a bunch of stuff that I just needed to say. It wasn't even stuff that I needed people to hear.
Right. Yeah.
It was just stuff that I needed to hear myself say it.
Yes.
And I knew that I wasn't going to allow myself to say it in any other context.
Yeah.
I could, if I can have my character say it, then, oh, he's saying it. Now I can look at it objectively. Is that a shitty thing to say? Is that something that an asshole would say, or is that something that a person I can sympathize with would say?
Yeah, because you can do like a table read and hear the good guy say, and you're like, it doesn't fit that character as much as I
Yeah,
thought.
well, I mean, it's just one of those things. Like, I'm one of those people, I'm like, yeah, this isn't going to help anybody for me to say this out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, and so I just won't. And so there's some internalizing that goes on there. But my first script that I wrote was called Pagliacci. It was like a clown killer script.
Yeah.
5 years ago. It was terrible. But I had like had the character saying a bunch of ridiculous, heinous shit in there because it was stuff that I had never allowed myself to say, and I just needed to test it.
Yeah.
Because I was scared to say the stuff, and I was like, well, when you're scared, it just makes it like you can't tell if it's actually bad or not.
Yeah. And also, too, there's a weird flip side to that, too, because if you're afraid to say it, the viewer could be afraid to support it by hearing it in a film, and that's great depending on the character.
It can be. Yeah. I think that's the funny thing about movies is that I think a lot of people secretly get a lot of their catharsis out of their thoughts, their darker thoughts that they don't really have any other outlet to do. Like, oh, I'll have the villain fucking say this shit.
Yeah.
Right? And we can kind of critique it or not.
That's why it's like the power of that. When you walk out of watching a Rocky movie or something, like you're like throwing your fist, like you feel like you're a boxer.
Yeah,
like,
for
okay,
sure.
That was good, but I know I'm not. But like that was good. You did a good job.
Yeah, for sure.
You walk out of a movie that's got a little bit of a deeper tone. Maybe you start thinking about things for yourself, or it was just pure entertainment, and that's okay too.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I have one other question I want to ask you. We are at 3 hours and 15 minutes. I shouldn't be checking the clock, but it's my second episode, and I did cut things off with Kane last time saying, oh, you'll come back, which he will. But I, at the same time, we're figuring out how does this fucking podcast work. I've always had a massive appreciation for like Joe Rogan and other guys that can do 3 hour long dialogue.
Yeah.
Doing 3 hour long dialogue with anybody without getting pissed off to me is usually an accomplishment, right? Because people are so prone to say shit that they don't really think about, right?
Yeah.
So I would say yes. I think we get a gold medal. But I want to ask you one other question, and then we'll close it out. You're writing a novel.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if I'm going to phrase this as a question, but I'm going to tell you what I think first. I think it is really fundamental for actors to understand the story, like structure of story. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of actors that, I just want to act. I get it. But you got to understand the fundamentals of how story is structured and what needs to happen because it shows in your delivery and your auditions about your instincts about the character, right? You're writing a novel. I want to know, you're already nodding and agreeing with me, but I want to know your thoughts on that because I've told a lot of actors, like, you want to be a better improviser? Write dialogue.
Yeah. And
I don't think that actors are aware when they're improvising, they're writing.
Yeah, because some people may just think the physical act.
Mm-hmm. No, but like when you improvise how you say a line, you are literally editing how the fucking script is written on set. Right. It's true. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying that's fucking great. You're giving life to it.
Yeah.
But I really would like to see actors take ownership of being writers in those moments. You didn't put pen to paper, you didn't type any keys. But you did reword how something is said because it fits the character better.
Yeah.
And it fits the character better the way that you're playing it.
Yeah, and it's got to come out of your mouth. It's got to sound genuine.
Yeah, and if the character's using a word that, for one, you as a person you don't regularly use, and it starts to feel forced or whatever.
That's the big thing,
right?
Yeah.
And being able to say, "Look, man, I'm trying to say to the director, I'm trying to draw from what I have. I would never say that word.
Yeah.
Can I use this word?
Yeah. Can we try this?"
And if the director's like, let's try it. Let's see if it almost 99% of the time it delivers better, right? Because it's the word you're familiar with.
Yeah, it's truth.
Right, right. I've noticed like, I wrote it this way. I want you to say it this way, and I look back at it. and I'm like, no one's noticing this, but I'm noticing it.
Yeah,
we should have reworded that for him. Mm-hmm. It would have worked better with his own internal lexicon.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a very big deal, and you're 100% right. I've always felt that it has to help. With the delivery of a scene, because like you can't come in with the delivery of a very heartfelt scene in the middle of the movie where a bunch of dramas happened, and if the beginning character, the character that you were in the beginning was more fun-loving and happy in the beginning, but then things started to go wrong, you got to know how to play that.
Yeah.
And not just play it and make it obvious that you're an actor. Like, you got to feel that too. You got to know how to feel that scene.
Well, it's got to make
what
sense.
Right
like
now?
if your character's transitioning from dramatic moment to like funny moment, right? Like, how did they get there?
Yeah, you got to be on the ride.
Your sensibilities about how you got there need to be genuine.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you.
Would you encourage other actors to like just study story structure and write their own stuff and all of that?
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Even if you never make it a film, write it. I write screenplays constantly, and I'm just like,
there's no need for it to be made. It's just a matter of you becoming better at understanding the shit.
Yeah, it just helps me feel better. I'm like, I'm a writer on this series that hasn't gotten fully started yet because everybody's so busy, but it will eventually. But we're doing this series of The Invisible Man, where we're giving it a bit more reality to it, which is very exciting. Yeah, and it was the first like real thing I've started writing that wasn't a music video treatment or the book. So with this, it's been exciting because it's like, because we're all so busy with our own individual things, it's allowed me the time to step back and then look at it again and be like, the dialogue, that's too much. Or maybe that's not enough. Or, oh, you're saying exactly what they're trying to say. Why don't we say it a different way? And maybe the line means something different to the actor. And let's leave this a little more open for that actor to do that, to have ownership.
I heard a thing, who was it was Bryan Cranston was talking to Paul Rudd about a comedy script that he was sent that was by a big comedy director and all of that. And Paul Rudd worked with him a bunch. And he said, is like, the script was kind of like really straightforward. Yeah. And he was like, Paul, you worked with this guy. The movies you guys have done are awesome, but this seems kind of flat. What's going on here? And Paul said, well, this is the process with comedy films, right? They write a really basic, straightforward script, and they cast the fuck out of it with all-star comedy actors and let them play.
Very cool.
And the actors are the ones that are bringing the physical and verbal comedy to the script.
That's awesome.
And I didn't know
comedy.
I didn't know it was done that way. But apparently Paul Rudd, a lot of the big comedies that he's been on, the scripts are written that way.
That's really cool.
The jokes aren't on the fucking paper.
Yeah, it's
right?
in the actor.
The jokes are in the fucking actor. They're in absurd situations.
Yeah.
Right? That's the writing is definitely that, right? They're in like absurd, ridiculous situations. But Bryan Cranston was like, there's no jokes. It's a comedy, there's no jokes. Right? But they were, and I thought that was like, well, that's interesting. You don't realize how much they're really relying on the actors to have sensibilities about what to comment on, what to joke about.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff, that's really cool because because I haven't had a chance to do a whole lot of any comedy really aside from the music videos, but again, it's no dialogue, it's all improv. Yeah, the mustache one. Everyone loved that mustache. I was like, some people thought it was real. I was just like, I couldn't grow that nice of a mustache. That was so
I knew it wasn't real, but I was like,
at the end
he's
you
so
see
like, honestly, that bit, you were like just going for it all the way. Like, yeah. I was like, holy shit.
Yes, my wife, I was that guy all day.
Oh,
because he was so fun.
That's so funny.
He was so fun.
For everybody who's watching, that's from his reel. He was in a music video where he played a guy with a mustache, and he's like,
it's
really excited about something, and I.
It's ridiculous. It was an anti-talent competition. It was like an anti-talent show was the concept, and everyone who came up was terrible.
Has to suck at something.
They all have to be terrible, and then the only people we like are the last people that come up and are basically ourselves. Like they're super like punk and like gothy looking, and they just like kind of say like fuck this competition, and they just start making out. And it's so gross because it's just like licking their face. It's so obnoxious and over the top, as it should be in a comedic video.
Yeah.
And then, that was my reaction to them. That's what I've been looking for all day.
That's fucking funny, man.
It was a blast doing that. But aside from that, I haven't had a chance to do any actual like acting comedy with lines and writing or anything like that. But with like any other things that I've been able to do, even just in acting classes where we're doing like scenes, like we're just breaking down scenes. Sometimes one of my favorite things to look at is like, well, what's he really saying here? What's my character actually saying when they say, I love you? What does that really, like, what is he really saying? Is he actually, depending on the rest of the story,
does he mean it?
Does he mean it? Is it coming from a place of like genuine affection? Is it just lust? Is it manipulation? Like where's this guy getting at? And then I'll kind of wonder sometimes, or even if it's a scene that we're just breaking down that's already from a very well-known movie, we'll look at it and I'll just kind of say like, why don't we just say what he actually meant to say and try that? You know, let's try to stop sugarcoating it for a second. And it helped us really get to the delivery. And that doesn't end up sticking, of course. I'm not going to be like, I'm manipulating you right now. You know, I hope you're falling for it. But like, okay, cool. That's not what he's saying. That doesn't make sense with.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense with the next line. So on to the next idea. And we never cancel out anything. And it's really fun because then eventually you do get to the core. And then it's like, okay, now I know what I'm actually saying behind these words. And that's exciting because with comedy, it sounds like they get an opportunity to do that.
Often people, I would say most of the time, people don't actually say what they mean.
Yeah.
Asking what's behind all of that, I think, is totally...
It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so awesome. I did that when you sent me the pages for Shoegazer. I was just like, it's really what's really going on behind this guy?
Yeah.
That was so fun to break that down.
Yeah, it's a fun little script. So yeah, we'll be shooting it here in a couple weeks. But it's I don't know. I've never written a one-man piece.
Yeah,
and that's hard to do and be a full story.
For sure.
So I'm actually really proud of it. I think it'll.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
gonna be
stoked.
fun.
I can't wait.
So, dude, we killed it. 3.5 hours.
Look at
man.
us.
Holy
Yes.
shit, dude. This is great. So this has been an absolute pleasure. I love when I have good instincts about people, and I know that we're going to jam, which we clearly did. It was the same way with Kane when he was on the podcast last week. I hope we can keep that up, and I keep bringing people on that I just jam with. Because like I said before, this isn't just about, it isn't just about like promoting. I want to promote you guys, anybody who's a creator here in town. So if anybody's watching, right, if you've gotten this far, you're at 3.5 hours. You actually hung out with us assholes for that long. If you are a local filmmaker, actor, creator, artist of any kind, a musician, anything like that, I'm trying to get connected with you guys. I'm trying to use this as the ability to provide a platform for our local community. So if you are interested, hit me up. You can message me on YouTube or whatever, any of the stuff. If you are interested in listening to Black Mansions or seeing anything that Tom has done, the links in the YouTube video will be down below. He will give those to me so that he gets some freaking radio play too. Enjoy the stuff. If you guys like electronic music that's got a little bit of a dark vibe to it, dig it. He's got some great stuff. I really enjoy it. But thank you guys for watching. I'm going to do my little closeout here and then we'll sign off. So, alrighty. I'll flip on over here. All right, folks. Thank you so much for hanging out in the GhostChaser Podcast. This is episode 2. We had Tom Kunzman here, and like I said, we're just excited to have anybody who's in Las Vegas, if you've made it already, or if you're in the dawning stages of your creative career, hit us up, hang out with us. We just love to chat. But thank you so much, and we will see you guys next week. I don't know who's going to be on it. We'll find out. Maybe one of y'all will reach out to me. But either way, I'm excited to talk to you guys and meet you guys and just support this community that we have and just kind of rise all the boats with the water in the creative community in Las Vegas. Fuck Los Angeles. We're in Las Vegas. He's keeping his laugh to himself. But seriously, just trying to build something really great here, and I think we've got a lot of amazing people here in town. I'm excited to connect with you guys. So without any further ado, thank you so much. Peace.